it down for the topics didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Cool.
so we can talk about whatever people brought in.
Perfect.
If it's too loud, we could probably turn the fan down. I just don't want anyone hating. Up to you all.
Really not really anything from the coolness, so why don't we turn the noise down?
I didn't hear what you said, sorry.
See that?
I'm not gonna hear you with it went out. If I'm not looking at you, I won't hear you.
Okay. Not anyway.
Yeah.
There you go, that's it.
It made the room feel bigger.
Is that better?
That's, the sound is better.
Sounds better? Okay. I just want to make sure you all can hear it.
I can't normally anyway, so it's moot. I just have to keep looking to see who's talking. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add or change? That I would move. Oh. I don't want to make a motion while you're cogitating.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm good, yeah.
Okay. I move we accept the agenda as written. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The agenda is accepted as written. And I have no announcements. Does anybody else have anything that's okay? And is there anybody here for public comment?
Public, do any of you want to make a comment?
Actually, she's number 2.
Okay.
She's a presentation of a discussion in progress.
Or do you have something you want to like talk about?
Are you having the town board meeting?
Oh, no. Thank you.
What's the matter?
We took over the town again on accident.
Technically, it's the police commission meeting in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But still, I think.
Sorry, that's what happens when you get an anarchist as a clerk.
I'm not. Is it a video issue?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Bob.
Good then. Nobody's gonna hear me say cogitate on TV then. That's
Well,
good.
everyone can watch it on repeats.
It's on, it's also kind of live streaming on YouTube right now, too.
For the millions at home watching.
Yeah.
The second item on the agenda was a presentation or discussion with any tenants or landlords informally applying for assistance from the Landlord-Tenant Relations Council, including previous requests. And Julia has come back to talk to us again about her experience with the sexual harassment, and Sergeant Kuko is here, and I thought it would be good if she gave her presentation first, and then Sergeant Kuko could inform us about what we could do about situations like this. Would you like to talk again? Yeah, please.
Alright, I just think it's important for the landlords and landladies, homeowners, to take it really seriously when someone is being harassed. And also, just to know what is considered harassment versus like assault, because I assumed that if someone like threw me through a couple rooms and I like landed on my arm and then this person like landed on top of me, that would be assault. But apparently that's harassment in the second degree. Like there have been apparently people who have like black eyes and it's still assault in the second degree. I'm sorry, harassment in the second degree.
It's okay.
And so, you know,
Sorry.
it's,
Point of information, is that like state law, is that?
New York State penal law.
New York state
Yeah.
law? Okay.
it's New York State law. And I also didn't know the difference between different orders of protection. I had one order of protection placed against the person in my old house where I was living. It really didn't do much because we were still able to live in the house, and as long as we were within the same space as each other, he just didn't give up. So then there's another one where it's like a full stay away where this person's like not allowed within a certain amount of feet from me. And by the way, this has been updated, so the person is not allowed within a certain amount of feet. I mean, thanks to the police. It's just apparently, I was told by one of the police officers who really wanted to help me and didn't know how. She said like violating the first kind of order of protection where you're allowed to live together is something like the equivalent of a parking ticket. It's just not New York State law. There's only so much the police can do. So I feel like landlords really need to like hone in on the signs when there's someone who's really not acting or behaving appropriately and not safely in someone's house. It was very frustrating for the police and for me because the police kept telling me, like, talk to the landlord, and I was like, well, I did, and I keep trying to move out because he doesn't seem to really, or sorry, this person, the landlord, didn't really seem to take it very seriously. He treated it as though, like, you know what, you both have to get along, otherwise you're both gonna get kicked out. And sometimes, yes, sometimes people need to get along, and that was not what this was. This was like I was being harassed, and everybody in the house vouched for me, everybody knew it. People even said they would go to court and make a statement, and it just, there was so little that could be done. I feel like it would just have been so much smoother, so much easier on the police, easier on the housemates, easier on the village, on the town, if we all just worked together. And like, you know, because first of all, why would you want someone living in your house who doesn't know how to treat other people and who can't keep their hands to themselves? That's like a basic kindergarten rule. I think that needs to be taken just really seriously. I was fortunate, I never had any physical abuse growing up, so I didn't ever have, you know, the thought of like, I didn't ever have any thoughts of like guilt, like, oh, maybe I deserved this. No, I knew right away, like, this is not the way you treat another human being. And so it was confusing for me that like the landlord didn't really seem to take it very seriously, and the landlord's response was that, you know, well, I wasn't there. There are certain things that even I think if you're not there, you have to take seriously. Even if you didn't see it, you have to at least try, investigate, talk to the people. I didn't receive any phone calls. I don't think I even came face to face with the landlord since that happened. The landlord avoided the house, more specifically.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but at what point did the police get involved?
They were involved the whole time, and so after a certain amount of like, hey, she's getting beat up again, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, and I was not just, you know, the housemate didn't just try to claw through a door. He threw me on the ground and like fell on top of me, and this can't happen any longer. This can go no farther. It's already gone way too far. I need some type of order of protection. And they were like, well, in that case, you need to press charges or something. And I was like, fine, I'm okay with that at this point, because my body doesn't feel safe. Like, I need my body to feel safe. And then, you know, it was just, it was a lot of paperwork stuff that I still don't really understand. Just, I guess maybe because we were not in a domestic relationship, it was harder to put an order of protection on the housemate or something.
Can I
Do you wanna-
I just want to ask a question. I think that if what you're describing, if the level of whatever is going on is only, it's just considered harassment or whatever,
Yeah.
I think the landlord would have a heck of a time evicting anybody.
Yeah.
And so the landlord is sort of stuck and not able to do anything. But I have a question for you. At what point does something become assault? I mean, I would think that laying your hands on somebody would be some sort of criminal offense.
No, are you okay with me speaking
Yes.
with everyone about this?
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for
coming.
coming.
Firstly, I am actually the supervisor on duty right now, so I do have, once in a while you might see my face freeze because I have people talking in my ear. So if I have to get up and go, I'll let you know. So just
Thank you.
understand that I am supervisor on duty. So unfortunately, we have to abide by the confines of the law, and don't take this the wrong way. A lot of people see it on TV. I was assaulted, and they try to bring that through TV into real life, where in reality, harassment and assault, there's the differentiation between the two is serious physical injury. And I know what you explained, and it's unfortunate for a situation like you where if somebody did put their hands on you, it's very traumatizing to you.
It's very
But
scary.
the way the law reads,
Yeah.
unless there's serious physical injury, sometimes, even like, let's say a bar fight, somebody punches somebody in a little black eye, that's still only a harassment. Because it depends on the extent of the injury. So, while you feel that you're being wrong, but where it should be an assault charge, it really technically is, under the eyes of the law and how it's written, only a harassment. Now, what you were saying earlier about one of the officers speaking with you about the order of protection, and if there was a violation of that, it would be the equivalent of a parking ticket. You might have misunderstood that. What I'm understanding is that what that person did to violate that order of protection, that charge alone is the equivalent of a parking
That's what I
violation.
meant.
But the actual violation of the order of protection is a misdemeanor. Let's say you have an order of protection against someone, and I'll go into the different types as well. And let's say you have a no harass order of protection, and this person that has the order of protection against them, they harass them. If they get charged with that harassment, their harassment is only a violation. But the fact that they violated that order of protection by harassing you, now they get charged with criminal contempt. So I think you might have misunderstood.
I think I do, yeah.
So the two types of orders of protection, there's a no harass order of protection and a full stay away order of protection. A no harass is pretty much just a piece of paper, in layman's terms. It pretty much spells out, act like a human being.
Yeah.
It pretty much tells you can't annoy them, harass them, strike them, shove them, kick them.
So it should be obvious.
Pretty much, exactly. Obvious things is just act like a normal human being around this person. So that means that they don't have to stay away from you. You can still be around each other. You can still live in the same house. They just can't harass you. That's why it's called a no harass. The other one is a full stay away. That's where they have to stay away from you, your place of employment. They can't contact you through phone, text messages. They can't even have a mutual friend contact you.
Yeah.
They can't have Johnny, hey Johnny, can you find out how she's doing? And Johnny asks you, that's a violation.
Yeah.
So those are the two orders of protection. But now, and what's your question again? I mean, I know there's a lot of questions to ask, but
Well, I think it was just confusing for me. I think I had so many questions. It was very confusing how the same thing that we talked about, just how it just so happened I was really fortunate I didn't get injured. Because I
Yeah.
really did fly through a room, and I think
Yeah.
I was so taken aback that I just was relaxed and just went with it, and then
this was by a landlord?
no, it was by a tenant.
Another tenant,
But
okay.
the landlord really didn't take it so seriously, and it just brings a concern of, I feel like if the landlord maybe took this more seriously and got more involved, it might not have been so hard on you guys. It might not have escalated to this level. I'm not sure how they would do that.
Did
but-
you want to move out and the landlord wouldn't let you out of your lease or
No,
your arrangement?
I wanted to move out and I didn't have the funds to move out, and I kept looking and I couldn't find anything.
Oh,
So
but if the
I-
landlord didn't at any point say, no, you got a lease, you're staying there, I don't care what happens.
No, there wasn't anything like that. So, yeah, that would have been awful. But thankfully, that was not the case. It was more just like the landlord's response was, well, if you don't like it, you move out. And I was like, well, I'm looking, but meanwhile, I'd like to feel like safe. And it's really hard to be in the right mind state to find a place to live when you're constantly like worrying and frantic and afraid where you're living.
Sergeant Foucault,
Yeah,
would
so-
you suggest in the future, if someone feels threatened by a housemate, that they contact their landlord or they just contact you?
Well, if you feel threatened by a housemate, I always tell people to come to the police station. And even if it is at the level where it's not criminal, which is what we do, criminal, you're at least creating a record, a course of conduct. And that would also help where in the future, should it become habitual, it's showing a course of conduct where it's continually happening, where the initial incident might not be criminal, but the repeated acts of similar incidents
That's
could turn into something that's arrestable, but still only on the violation level.
That's true, because there were a lot of situations where this housemate would just stand outside my window and or stand outside my door, and just really a lot of things that they're more like annoying things. You don't think, oh, I'm gonna call the police. And so obviously I didn't call the police when someone just is like standing outside my window. It's more just like, can you not do that? Or I'd call the landlord, and nothing really happened when I would call the landlord.
Did the landlord ever meet with the other person?
I don't know. I still don't know to this day. Other housemates in the house want to know too, because eventually people in the house themselves stop feeling safe, like other people, and they're all men. So I mean, it's just.
Of course, you know, as I said before, sometimes your hands are tied. You could go, my inclination would be go to the house, get hold of the person that's harassing
Right.
you, and lay the law down to them, but you're limited. I can't threaten them, I can't tell them I'm kicking you out, because if I can't, I can't.
Right.
And then I get in trouble because I'm making claims or, whatever,
Right.
harassing him.
Right. That's what we don't want.
That
So,
Yeah.
Donna,
Yes.
Wouldn't you think though that this would be covered kind of under the warranty of habitability? Where if like, people are unsafe and creating, obstructions for like other tenants, there's been a
I
very,
would think that, but I'm not, I don't know.
I
if
actually,
I've reported
I
it.
agree with, I work down here, we have all those rules for safety with the building department, they do inspections to make sure that if you're providing an environment that's unsafe because of the actions that are happening in there in an uncontrolled way, yeah, I think that's,
Yeah, I would think so.
That's
I would
another
think so.
area where it helps to come and report, even when the act is not, when it's a civil act.
Yeah.
Just, that way you at least have a track record.
Yeah.
That just shows a continuous course of conduct. That's what we're looking at, is course of conduct. And if somebody commits a repeated course of conduct and serves no legitimate purpose,
thank you for the honesty.
that eventually could lead to harassment. But individual times here and there, just because you're annoyed or,
Well,
and
that's
I understand
right,
you don't feel
yeah.
safe, but sometimes it doesn't cross the line of being criminal.
Well, that's what I mean. It didn't. It started out as like more like annoyances, more like why would I call the police? It's like.
It was antagonistic.
Yeah, it was just not great behavior. And then when I finally did, it had escalated so far. They were like, "Why didn't you call us sooner?" And I was like, "Well, I did a couple times, but I never foresee it getting this far. Like, no one's ever done anything like that."
And most of the time, these situations, they take care of themselves. Most of the times.
Yeah.
But if you
It's
see
kinda
that it's
like-
not, it's probably in your best interest to come and report these non-arrestable offenses just to show a course of conduct.
Yeah.
As far as the landlord is concerned, there's nothing that we can do to force them to,
Right.
on our end.
Yeah.
I'm sure with your advice, and I wish I knew more about civil issues with landlords and tenants, but whenever we have somebody come to us with an issue that's non-criminal, we refer them to the Ulster County Sheriff's Department, the Civil Division, because they have a division that deals with landlord-tenant issues. When it turns criminal, that's what we're there about.
I would think the landlord would have wanted to get involved at that point because they're mediating, because then they say
Oh,
two
yeah.
good tenants, or one good tenant, one not so good tenant, but, I think the landlord dropped the ball. I think that they should have certainly had a meeting with both of you.
I don't understand it either.
A person who files, a person who files a police report, that like a tenant, for example,
Mhm.
could request a copy of that, correct?
Absolutely.
Pass it on to the landlord,
Yes.
which if like the landlord is actually trying to do something about it, and then you create a paper trail, as you were talking about, and those are documents that can be made copies, the tenant can then pass on to the landlord. That would help empower the landlord to then present that to a judge. So like if it was like an eviction situation, like if there was a paper trail and the tenant passed on copies of those police reports to the landlord could then use that. I mean, that's just like a potential thing. I mean, this is a really, I myself, when I was, in a different apartment, I lived with a man who seemed okay at first, and then again, it was like, those like things of, well, you're not gonna call the police about this, because then you're gonna seem like crazy. Well, like, things, it's such a gradual escalation, and it's like hard to find that line of delineation, where it's like, okay, now I call the police, wait,
Yeah.
maybe now, or maybe now.
Exactly.
So it's really tricky, and luckily this person actually ended up getting evicted before anything got really serious, but it was heading in that direction, and it was very, very comfortable for me and other females that I was living with at the time. And it is hard, because it's when it's not a domestic partnership, and it's not like a couple living in a dwelling, and it's roommates, and especially in this town, where there's a lot of rental properties where each room is rented out separately, so people who may have never met before are living together. It's very, very tricky when you have that kind of situation. It does help to have a landlord who's motivated to make sure that that's a comfortable situation for everybody. But the paper trail does help.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I feel like there might be some other things that we can discuss at some point to help the police department make that a more clear-cut and easy process for tenants. But
That process is, right, recently, they're keeping a log of events for me. None of them ever, have ended it up in an arrest or even in a confrontation, but because of the issue, the minute it started to get more wanky than I needed it to be, started calling in and saying, this is what's on now. And they're all extremely helpful and very much not at all saying, oh, well, that's kind of silly, don't you think? They're taking every one of those things seriously, because one by one, they don't mean much, but when you add them all up together, they start to draw a picture that when you have that full-blown picture, when you really scream for help, everybody knows what's going on, or the people that need to know or have that picture in hand.
Another thing I did want to point out though as well is that a lot of times these things get reported. Sorry.
He's hearing voices now.
Sorry. Hearing voices.
I hadn't thought about the point about whether or not you could have somebody evicted based on these kinds of things. I think with my lease I could, but there are a lot of landlords that might not have. My lease is kind of ridiculous, so.
That's a forever process. If the person's really perceiving danger, it's a forever process.
Right.
That's what's not too late.
Just one thing I wanted to point out, a lot of times we do get walk-in complaints at the police station and to report non-criminal cases. And while sometimes they want us to handle the situation for them, we can't really handle the situation where they want us to handle it in the form of giving somebody a phone call and tell them to knock it off. Unfortunately, we don't play the playground bully if they're not doing anything criminal, because they have rights as well. They don't, so if it's something that just because you don't like it, you want to come to the station to report it, that's fine. But we have a lot of requests for us, well, can you just give them a call, just tell them to knock it off? We can't really do that.
No, that's.
But the sheriff is an option.
The sheriff has a civil division.
But if there was an issue, would the tenant be better off calling the sheriff's office to do that?
I don't think that they're going to handle that in that way either.
I don't think so either.
If there's nothing, but I refer people to the sheriff's department for issues regarding your rights, landlord rights, tenant rights, how to go about eviction process, things like that. I think they're going to handle it the same way as we do. If it's non-criminal, there's really nothing they can do. They're not going to, just because you go to them and they have a civil division, they're not going to be like, hey, knock it off. Play the playground bully. This is not what we do.
Well, that's why I mentioned, I think it's really important for landlords to take this seriously, because there is only so much that the authorities can do in this case. They can't just call someone and say that if they don't know the situation, and the landlord may not know the situation, but they can still call someone and say, hey, what happened? Like, do you have anything to say about this? Because I got a call from another tenant.
Did the police notify the landlord if they get a complaint from one of the tenants?
No, we don't. If we do notify landlords if it's a complaint, like a noise complaint, parties, things like that. But as far as individual circumstances or situations like that, we don't really notify the landlord.
I got a question. So who determines what constitutes serious physical injury to differentiate the charge between harassment and assault?
Honestly, if it gets to that point where we would deem it to be borderline, we call the district attorney.
Okay.
And not trying to pass the buck.
Yeah.
When it seems to us that it would be serious enough to, hey, what charge could we charge? We call this district attorney, explain everything that happened. This is what happened. We responded here to this location for this situation. You can explain everything, and we usually go by their recommendation.
Okay. Just
broken bones. Somebody gets punched, a broken orbital socket.
Well, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, you were saying a black eye is essentially just harassment. But what if 3 weeks later there ends up being a medical complication or something? Is that charge then elevated, or has that already been levied?
No.
How does that whole situation?
Situations like that happen all the time where somebody will. We deal with a lot of bars. There'll be a bar.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody will go to the hospital because their nose is bleeding, and come 3 days later, it turns out that it's broken, and they're now starting to have breathing problems. We can definitely always, the district attorney can always add charges to that. But as far as there's not really like a clear line. There's not a piece of paper we can look at and say, okay, scratch to the left of the nose, that's harassment. Broken nose,
So it's essentially up to the discretion of the DA.
Right. I mean, there also could be. you could charge with an attempted assault. That's another thing, which is, might not be the harassment, but if there was the intent, and it's, once again, you're trying to prove intent, which is hard to prove intent.
Well, I think in her situation, I mean, I think that intent would definitely have been,
Yeah.
you know, proof for an attempted assault.
That's what I thought too. I was amazed at how difficult it was.
And
What's battery?
That's clear, there's no battery.
There's no such thing as battery, don't pattern.
No, you know, it just might be another name for an assault or harassment.
Okay.
Just how it's DWI in New York, DUI in some
Yeah,
places,
okay.
you know.
I always thought if you laid your hands on somebody, that was a crime.
That's what I thought too.
Sounds like they're.
Yeah, it's not a crime,
update their law.
it's a violation.
You know, I think there's something else that should be, and I know this is about New York State law, this isn't about what we can do here, but there should be a context to this serious injury and what's harassed. When if you go to a bar, it's kind of it's the context of that environment is going to lead to the situations where they can't be taken as seriously as one would like maybe, or you have to analyze whether or not it's nonsense due to alcohol, but somebody should feel safe in their home. That the context of the environment should be important to this discussion.
Well, that would be in my police report, right? Like if there is a police report. That would
This is a sidebar, just comment that on the law itself, I know that there's nothing that we really can do about it. We can maybe think of ways to inform people how to. There's a lot of movements all over the village for women to stand up to stand up, not even just women, but for people to stand up against victimship and allowing our neighbors. This is a community problem. This is just a landlord problem.
Yeah.
And anybody that is feeling victimized in their home, that's a terrible thing.
So are you making a suggestion that where a harassment on the street would be different from a harassment in the home? It
That'd
should
be a-
probably, and if it happens in the home, it should be elevated, is that what you're?
No, I'm actually really not educated enough on this subject to make a really good thesis on it right now.
Yeah.
But my thinking process is taking me through the idea that when somebody throws you across the room in your home and you can't live there safely and you know that stuff's coming back tomorrow, that's different than I got in a bar fight last night. I'll never see those people
Yeah.
again.
And from the bar fight, you can go home to your home.
Right.
If you're home and something happens, where are you going?
Right. So the context of where that type of behavior happens should be significant to the consequences.
Unfortunately, there's not subsections of harassment, or harassment that happens in a bar, harassment that happens in a home, harassment, that's, you know.
I'm ready to storm Albany. Anybody else? You know what I mean?
So my question for you, Sergeant, is who determines which kind of order protection? Is there like a rubric for which each one would be applied to?
Since I've been doing this, there really hasn't ever been a situation that I've come across where I'm like, it could be either. To me, it's pretty much clear cut, but the judge makes that final determination. The judge will make that determination, but I've never had it where it was like, it could be a stay away, it could be a no harass. It's usually.
So is it like the serious injury kind of thing again where?
It also, it depends on the relationship that people have together, whether or not there's children, whether or not they live together, the mechanism of injury, things like that.
And it can be updated, like at first I have just a regular, we can live together order of protection, and I thought that would be fine because I moved out that night when he violated it 3 times and the cops couldn't do anything about it because he had an alibi the whole time. I just wanted to get out, and then, you know, he kept showing up near my house and was trying to talk to my friends and holding my mail and like, just like really saying I needed to come to the house to get my mail, and it was just like, all right, and following me up and down the street. It was like,
But
I don't know how to take
in that
people
context,
like
what can a landlord do?
well, nothing at that point because I moved out, you know,
Right.
so that's not up to the landlord anymore. That's like help me police officer territory, you know.
Well, did you
So-
report all these incidents?
Yes, and then they updated.
As far as him following you around and all
Yeah,
that?
I reported. I had to because I didn't know what this person was capable of.
Now you're talking about stalking.
Yeah,
Which,
exactly.
between you and I here right now, I don't have the case in front of me, I don't know exactly what happened.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean, if you'd like to come in when you're done here,
Well,
we
they
can go
updated.
over everything,
they
but.
did. They made it a full stay away because it was clear that the one order of protection was not enough. So apparently they can, if you do get like an order of protection and it's just a regular one, and then things get worse, it can be updated. You know.
Has the rule stay away been violated?
No, it has not. So, yeah.
as a landlord, just thinking too, is if this happened to me, I would bring the two people together, first of all, and get both stories. If it continued and I was getting a feeling that, one of them wasn't telling the truth, as the landlord, can I call the police and ask them to come in, or do the two people involved have to call?
And you're always welcome to call the police.
Okay. Like you said, start making a trail.
Yeah, and sometimes it's better that you call us.
Okay.
Because, when you start mixing emotions, we're the unbiased third party, supposedly. It's probably better to call us, because then things will get said or done that weren't intended or shouldn't have been said or done.
During our further discussions, because I can only suggest this later, and we all have an opportunity to discuss the merits of it, but if we were to ask the police, would you be interested in you to come and you're getting your second call from Julia, and she's not getting any traction with the landlord or the tenant? Would you think that it would be a good idea to refer those kinds of discussions for them to come to us? Because we could email the landlord, we could email the tenant, inviting, and it would be an invitation to a mediation, but it would bring it to the attention of those people that this is something that there's a problem that needs addressing. Whether they come or not, they've really been informed in a way they weren't before as to the fact that people are listening.
So are you suggesting that if somebody comes to report something non-criminal, but we're getting nowhere, we can refer to you and you contact the landlord?
That's kind of the idea I'm thinking, because
I
we're
think
already...
that's a great idea. The legality of it, I have to look into with
Right.
my bosses.
And I have to talk about it with everybody else
Yeah,
here, but before you went away, I wanted to ask you what you thought.
I have nowhere to go.
Okay. Okay.
Even in case I get called away. Yeah, I'll definitely speak to the bosses about that. I think it's a great idea.
We're trying to find...
Because then it kind of takes it out of our hands of playing the playground bully, which is not what we're supposed to do.
But we are. Actually, the idea of mediation, I've spoken with mediation people in Dutchess County and have emails out to those in Ulster, and we want to make this committee relevant and helpful, and being able to work with other entities like the police or the mediation center, that will actually make us able to make a difference.
Right, but the challenge with mediation is getting both parties to the table, and it sounds like these types of situations, you're only going to get one side to the table.
But that could also be a matter of record,
Well, that's the whole thing.
The landlord could ask for a document from us saying, we invited these parties, this person showed up, this person didn't. The landlord could add that to the collection of the police reports they send, they submit to the judge.
Biggest thing is having a paper trail.
You know what it does too, it widens the exposure. If it's between you and your roommate and then your landlord, and hopefully you call them, nothing happens, it's right there, it's done, it's in this little ball. If it's here,
Right,
we're
exactly.
landlords, we're tenants, we know people, we communicate with people, and so it's kind of gonna open it up to more visibility on them. And maybe the landlord at that point would wanna have a little bit of input in it to try to, come off looking a little bit better than just ignoring you who was terrified of your living situation.
I did want to add though, if it's a single incident where somebody comes in and reports it, we usually won't make that phone call, to threaten. But we do make them often where it's a report, repeated acts. Where, I've done it before, where I'll call the landlord and I'll say, listen, you keep doing so and so, and if you continue to do it, you're going to cross into the criminal realm. So I have made those phone calls. But I guess what I meant before was we don't just do it on a regular basis where somebody comes in that is their first time coming in and we just call it to threaten somebody if nothing criminal happened. But this is where we get back to reporting each individual incident.
Right, and the reason you
Minor
report it
thing.
is your issue with this individual, he or she may have had issues with other people in the past, which they would know about, and that's
Right.
why it's important that you report it.
Because if you read harassment, not verbatim, but it's when a person strikes, kicks, or shoves somebody, or when they repeatedly commit such acts that serve no legitimate purpose, in which place the other person in reasonable fear of harm or something like that. I don't know exact words, but repeatedly commit such acts. So that's what we're working on for the harassment, repeatedly. So, like I said, even if it's something minor, report it.
Well, honestly, yeah, that's why that's one of the other reasons why I needed to update the order of protection and just be taken have it taken more seriously, because my friends were saying, like, you know, you're probably not the first girl who's done this to you. Like, think about, like, the other girls, and if you don't follow through with this, there will be no record. Like, it's not gonna get taken as seriously. At least if you do this, you know, you hopefully will feel safer, and then it will be on his record, that they'll know, like, watch out for this person who's predispositioned to behaving this way. So, yeah, you know, it's also just been good to have a paper trail as like a citizen, you know, watching out for each other kind of thing.
All right. Is this where we turn the air conditioning on?
It's sadly, I don't think you can open the windows in here either, can you?
Oh,
A couple of them are open.
most of them are open, yeah.
Thank you, Carmen.
If you want me to.
Thank you very much for coming. Did you want I asked Julia to come back because I wanted to make sure that our conversation kind of focused on what we might be able to do in the future when somebody had issues like that. But are there other things that you had planned on speaking about tonight that you could add to what we've talked to already, or you think it was pretty comprehensive?
Yeah, I was pretty much just told that I was coming in just to field questions.
Okay.
Not really giving a presentation. My main thing is mostly what we deal with when it comes to landlord-tenants. We pass the buck to the sheriff's department because that's what they do. They deal with the civil issues like that. We only jump in when it turns criminal.
I'm going to definitely propose we have a conversation about what we might be able to do to help people that are feeling victimized in their homes, but because
We could perhaps invite someone from the sheriff's office to come talk to us too. Sorry, usually not quiet, that's usually not my issue. We can invite someone from the Ulster County Sheriff's Department to come talk to us too. Yeah, the civil.
I wrote that down already.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that we can continue that conversation with them and see what their end of things, yeah.
But it's important, because you know it's a two-way street.
Yes.
Because I was in a situation a few years ago with a tenant who was really threatening me, my wife, and the other kids. And the police were great. Found out this guy barricaded himself upstate New York months earlier and held off the whole platoon of state police. So it was a serious situation. So it's, to be able to come here as a landlord would also be very helpful.
Yeah, this would be for anybody who's feeling victimized. That's why I said it's really a community matter. A lot of these things we say the landlord, the tenant, but I always want to try and keep the focus on the fact that these things are happening within a community that's a singular organism affected by both sides and the issues that happen with them. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
It was awesome.
Go get some air conditioning. You got to dial.
In your car.
How much is that vest weigh?
I total of 25,000.
With
You want to
the,
go speak more outside? Maybe I'll help you with that stuff. I didn't want to get too personal.
If you think it's a good idea.
Unless you want to stay for the meeting.
Should I
If you stay, I'll tell you what, I'm here until 11 o'clock. If you just want, if you want to come and talk more about, more personal issues dealing with this, that's fine.
I feel like I hope it's handled. I mean, it feels like it's handled.
Just remember, at the end of the day, an order of protection is just a piece of paper.
Julia?
It's not going to stop there.
I think we're done here.
Oh, okay.
Because I think that we all have more information, and I can't tell you how grateful I am personally that you brought your story to us, because it opened up a whole other avenue of ways that we can help these relationships. And you have my number. Call me and keep me updated, or email me either.
Okay.
I would like to hear that you're still doing well.
Thank you.
You're
Yes,
very
I'm
welcome.
gonna get
Thanks
to it
very
cooler.
Can I grab your email? 'Cause I'm going to follow up with the lieutenant about what we just spoke about.
Which one? Lieutenant?
Luch.
I'm going to be calling him on
Okay.
Monday about something else, but it's
Okay,
new.
but I'll let him know, because I'm going to see him now.
Okay.
When we talk about it, possibly you guys making referrals to the landlords.
Right, it's New Paltz Student Housing
New Paltz Student Housing?
at gmail.com,
gmail.com. Gotcha.
and it's Valerie.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, you're very, it's our privilege.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if this is, I'll just mention this, I don't know if it's in the reschedule, but I did look into this, And there's two areas here. There is an issue like that, the police come in, but they can only do so much. There could be, a complete breakdown in the heating system, the building's falling apart, and it's a dangerous situation. The police can do nothing.
Right.
So my suggestion here, if you want, I spoke with Corey, who's our fire safety person down in the building department.
Oh, I met him yesterday.
And he would be more than happy to come here and talk to us. I think you're going to have more issues with the building than you do with things like Julia. And Corey is a great guy. He filled out an application and submitted it, and New Paltz is now officially a safe building community. In fact, May was Safe Building Community Month. And he can come in and really tell us a lot of the things that, again, it's two-way streets, you're just talking about down here in South, whatever the apartments are. And the landlord, the smoke alarms were going off. They had to send the fire department out. Was it an issue that the landlord didn't properly keep them up, the smoke monoxide and smoke alarms up, or were they tampered with? So he could bring all of these things. I've got his card, and I'll give it to you.
If you have to share his email with me, I'll send him an invitation.
But,
Put him on the agenda. Thank you very much. Okay, Gallo Bill has expressed interest in coming and talking to us to help with the Tenant Protection Act, but it looks like he didn't come. I did not receive a second confirmation email, so I assume he's not coming this evening. I'll leave that open for him to be welcome to come at another meeting if he wants. And then, Alex, can you participate in this part of the discussion?
Sure.
The number 5 was about the discussing of the minutes, the draft release schedule. I raced into doing an agenda, and then I realized that we spoke last week about different. I stopped taking notes at one point. I was like, "Oh, it's going to be in the minutes," and it was about what assignment each person was going to take. Do you remember about the different that you had proposed different sections? I actually didn't write that down, and then it wasn't in the minutes. Did you write it? Did you write it down? What each person's assignments would be?
Well, we were, I think, A and C. I didn't write everybody's name.
Amanda and I and Robin maybe was, she did a great job on it by herself. All the attachments that she had sent out, the student handbook and the tenant handbook, and we were gonna update that and go through it, and she got it out there and got a list of them all at a point, not May.
Right, I have,
We're gonna go through it and just update it a little bit, make sure it's current and valid now.
And does anybody remember what I was supposed to do? I know I was supposed to call the mediation people, which I did.
I think you were part of the whole thing with Amanda.
And the form.
Yeah.
The forms, okay. Yes, I remember being interested in that. I wished I'd written it down because it's
So would
sort
you
of.
like me to try to include, because legally I only need to include any motions that are made, but if you'd like me to try and include more like homework assignments and stuff, I could do my best to do that.
Or I could grow up and just write notes. It's okay.
Well, it's hard to talk, share something,
Right.
keep everybody on the agenda.
Do you
and
keep those details as you go?
I can.
I would only ask if.
Because the mayor asks the same thing sometimes too for me to do that, so I have a system,
Oh,
so I
okay.
can start doing that better.
If we discuss that there's going to be assignments apportioned to different persons on the committee or we form any work groups, if you could make record of that for me, I would really appreciate it.
Then I will absolutely add that to record, and if I look really confused, then maybe you might have to slow down sometimes.
Yep, you
But
can ask us to slow down while you get it.
Yeah.
That too.
It's kind of like if there's a responsibility assigned to somebody, if you keep track of it, then.
And that's perfect.
Okay.
I will do that.
Thank you very much. And when do you release the minutes? Because sometimes I want to find the flow to the agenda.
So
But
it's tough because this was kind of an additional thing that was added on. You know, I'm here 18 hours a week. You know, that's it.
right,
So it depends. You know, on how well we stick to how the agenda is structured.
right.
When for the last meeting, it took a bit longer to do the minutes because I wasn't writing on the agenda because we went completely out of order and
Right.
completely went at it completely differently. But with this set of minutes, I'll have it ready for you, you know, next week when I'm in on Wednesday.
Okay, so it wasn't, the bigger question was, oops, there was something I expected to be in there that wasn't, and that was on me for stopping taking notes.
Okay.
I'll stop from not continuing to take notes. And then if I have a question, I can always call you and ask you. Do you remember
Yeah.
this point? Can you, even in your draft, you could pull it up and, right?
Yeah.
And remind me of what it's
Oh,
something.
yeah, yeah. And I also, that's the other thing too. I share all this right away with Alberta. So there's always somebody in the building that has like everything that happens. And the videos are recorded even though they don't always make it online, but I have a DVD of each one.
Mm-hmm.
So you can always come and pick that up, borrow it, come watch it, whatever. We can work it out. So even as the minutes are being prepared,
I'm going to try to take better notes as we go along too. I'm just still getting used to where we're at. Okay, so that was all. Did anybody else have any questions about the minutes process? Okay, and then I left the old business part pretty open to the recent discussion because we had things going on that people had assignments with and we're going to follow through with, and I was hoping people. Okay.
What, just kind of.
The four. Do you remember? Did you write down who was assigned to which of the parts of?
I did not. So, I mean, the committee that, like, I think it was just people who were gonna help work on updating any information, like the pamphlet, like the how to be a good tenant type thing, booklet. I mean, I honestly haven't had no time, and I'm not gonna have any time until the beginning of June to actually deal with that. But I can also send it to the building department first, just to see if there's anything that falls under their purview that they can just like correct for us, any things that need to be updated.
This is the rights and responsibilities for tenants?
No, I mean, that was like a document that we were giving out at the previous council that had been like voted on by the council, which we by all means could update if we chose to. We can update the resource list on the back, if anything that needs to be updated on that can be done. That's just kind of a one pager. This is more like a booklet that previously existed that I kind of went through, added to, updated, and combined with this other like pamphlet thing that we were pretty much ready to go out and publish, but that's kind of around the time that the last council ended. Yes, it looks like.
Okay, I didn't. That's the only thing I really have a label on because I wasn't
and
sure.
like bold titles.
Yep,
so I
yep,
think
yep.
that's it.
Okay.
So yeah, so that if anybody wants to, and you can also just read it on your own and then like email me comments. Like I don't know, however we want to do this.
And this one is, where does this one, the tenant bill of rights, did the
Yeah,
committee
that's the
write
one
this?
pager. So that's just like, but if you want to look over and see if there's anything that you think is missing or needs to be updated, you can look at the resource list on the back.
Right.
We can add any
But where does this
resources.
come from? Did we
That
write it, or
was-
is that a state thing?
That was something I wrote and I think maybe one other tenant wrote up and then was voted on by the council.
Okay.
And then the landlords were gonna do like a landlord version of it, but I don't think that draft ever got finished before the council kind of dissolved.
Okay.
So if the landlords wanna do your own version of that too, or we could do some kind of combined version. That's just what we were handing out from the previous council when we had educational events.
So I think it'd be a good idea if we all read them and kind of notated whatever things we think might be missing or could be added, or new topics. Even tonight's discussion is something I would like to find a way to squeeze into there about what safe actually means. It's not just about smoke alarms and, hot water. All right, and then there was the group I think that I was in had to do with recreating the flow chart for forms. that would help people who, and whether or not we could put those online, so they would have a resource on our website that would say, okay, this is what's going on, can I fill this out? I haven't done anything with that yet.
I think Robin was part of that too.
I think Robin was part of that as well, so.
Because if you have XYZ problem, you should fill
Right.
this form and do this.
Right, and there would be a section where, you know, this is not just about what tenants are gonna do when they're having problems, but landlords could have references there as well.
Right, your group was B and E.
There's-
Ken, Anna, and myself were A and C.
B&E?
I think that was gonna be 2 documents, right? There's gonna be like the protocol that we follow ourselves, saying like when a person comes to us, like step 1, if it's a tenant, did you alert your landlord? If you haven't, maybe you should do that. And just kind of a step-by-step how we would deal with someone coming to us. And then as this other document, what the community knows to do, you know, before coming to us, you know, whatever we want them to fill out as far as like a complaint form or issue form, you know, whatever form. We want them to fill out to give to us. So that was, I think, gonna be 2 separate documents. But I don't
Well, it
know if
needs
they
to
would
be
part of
one
the
is-
same committee,
yeah.
or if it was gonna be a separate, I'm not really sure.
So it was basically, B&E was gonna have something to do, I believe, with the process at which we can.
Right, formulate
accept-
programs to improve landlord-tenant relations.
Right.
And resolve problems and disputes between landlords and tenants through mediation and/or discussions at meetings of the council.
Oh, I wrote the notes on here. I have them. I wrote them on the code itself. Good, thank you. In reference to that, under what Robin and I were supposed to do, I think, Amanda, did you give me the information about the contact information for the, or did you give it to me, Alex, for the mediation group?
Well, Robin gave us a name, she looked up a name for it.
Duchess Mediation was,
Yeah.
and I talked to Maria, who was actually really excited about what we're trying to do here. And they would like to have, they felt that we should contact Ulster County Mediation as well. They are, the same way that the village and town share resources to minimize geography and minimize costs and wasted resources, Dutchess and Ulster County Mediation Centers do the same thing. So Dutchess comes here for court, because it's closer for them to come to court here in New Paltz, because we're right next to where their office is versus wherever. So, but they felt that they'd probably be the ones that would be covering us, and she was really excited about the idea of being able to mediate on these kinds of situations, and they would be happy to come and do a presentation, but she asked me to also extend the invitation to the Ulster County Mediation as well, so that we weren't stepping on their toes. So that's where that's at. I have this traffic out and I'm waiting for it to come back.
So Gallo, who's coming, or is potentially coming to talk about superintendent, I apologize if you guys talked about this while I was out there. Was he coming at a specific time, or he was just?
I invited him to come to the meeting and I sent him he expressed interest
Okay.
on Facebook, and I asked him for his email address because I need to keep the conversations foilable, so please, you know, if you'd like to come, send me an email. And I think I got the email from him, and I sent him the invitation to come, but then I did not get a second. And that was around about the time that we were doing the agenda. So I'm not sure if he decided not to come or tonight wasn't inconvenient. I would like to get some of the student activists to get involved with this, and some of the landlords as well. And what's next? Do we need to make some work groups? I mean, do we need to, I feel like having the discussion about flow charts and process, that if Robin and I were the ones who said we were going to do that section, then that is something that I should probably contact her and have like a mini work group meeting or a conversation on the phone and get started back and forth emailing, to not be doing every single detail of planning here. So I will contact her about those process forms during the month, and hopefully get together with her to talk about some rough sketches that we can bring and people can put. Oh, one other thing, every time, when I put out an idea for the agenda, mostly I'm not really asking for permission, but I really like everybody to see it, so that if my idea takes your idea further to something else you think might be pertinent, that might be applicable, we can add more to it. That's really what that is, to stimulate discussion. So that's why I'm putting out anything I think is a nice idea, and I welcome everybody else to do the same. And does anybody else want to say anything about what their assignments were and where they're at with them?
Well, as for conducting research into community housing, I have not had an opportunity to do anything. How about yourself?
I've been just having conversations with individuals, nothing like formal, but I've started, being able to write down some big issues that are a reoccurring trend, like habitability issues, as we've discussed, is a huge one. Like paint chipping, molds, things like that. And then also another thing is, that the building's not getting inspected. But I was talking with Mayor Tim a few times about these things, and I guess it's a large problem that landlords aren't registering their rental properties. So these, rental properties are occurring, but, to, Bryant in the building department, there's nothing there to look at. So I guess there's some disconnect between those two different parties. I've also spoken to, some residents, not students, who discuss some issues towards feeling priced out by sometimes students and their ability to leverage things like student loans and various other things. And a few people, who were a little bit I grew up in this town, but I can no longer afford to live in this town. And, I don't know if there's a lot we can do on that, because it's, big economic factors. But it was still, a thing to hear about and jot down as a concern that people had. And lastly, what was it? There's one more I'm forgetting about, but if I remember, I'll chime in.
Jeff, did you want to,
Yeah, I was not
nice to
here
meet you.
Hello.
Would you, because you weren't here, would you like to choose one of those committees
So
or?
are those the two kind
No,
of?
there's a couple of different things. One of them is about updating the handbooks and the literature on tenant and landlord rights and responsibilities. The other is the flowcharts and forms that would start the process for somebody who wanted to come formally to the committee. Anybody can walk in informally.
Yeah.
But if they wanted to do a formal process, and we were hoping to make a flow chart that would say, this is what's happening, yes, no, here's where I can go with that.
Yeah, you were
This is
discussing
the information I
that a
need.
little bit earlier, yeah.
Right, so that's a different committee. Robin and I are on that. You're welcome to help with that if you like. And then there's Ed's working on projects for. Repeat that for me, please. You said it better than I can right now.
I'm working more with that. I want to work more with the college. I know I spoke with Vicky Kosover today. The college supposedly has a pamphlet that they put together. Are you aware of that? The student association did.
I don't know, it depends on when they did it. I don't think they had it, because when we had ours, when I updated everything and had it passed by the council, I sent it to, I had a meeting with Ray Schwartz, who was Dean of Student Affairs at the time, and Victoria. And they were like, hey, whenever it's, finished, just give it to us. Victoria just needs to put her fancy stamp on it saying, hey, this is legally sound, and then we will send it out to all of our off-campus students, we will post it on our sites. But since then, that was
They've never posted anything on the site. They have it in a pamphlet form, but she's not sure where it is. That's what I would like to work on. Because
was it the same pamphlet that I adapted?
I don't know. I have to.
I've seen the pamphlet, but years ago.
I seem to have the impression that it was more recent. I could be wrong.
Is it something
But-
they put in the orientation folder or something?
I don't know. And that, this committee, this board, I think we're more of an informational organization of getting the information out. And I think that's what I want to be involved in right now. Let's focus on what processes are in place right now. If the college has a pamphlet that they're using, and you guys put together a pamphlet, let's find something that we adopt, that the college adapts, and put it online.
Put on both
I mean, they said,
websites.
oh, no, it's in paper form. I said, who uses paper
Well,
today?
I mean, I'm a current student, and I live off campus, and I mean, I've never seen a pamphlet or anything
Understood,
like
but
that.
there is no place for you to go online right now to find it, and
No,
that,
exactly.
because I searched for it. Because
Yeah.
when I'm looking for something now, I don't see, can somebody mail me something? No, I want it,
I'm also wondering if it's just the Attorney General's tenants' rights guide.
I don't know, but I think we need to work with the college.
Yeah.
I think our biggest problem,
Yeah.
and I could be wrong, and this is focusing just on students who live on campus for the first or second year and then move off. And it's not necessarily the students who find their rentals in October for the next year. It's the students who are scrambling at the last minute and taking whatever they can get and signing a lease without ever reading it. That's typically what I see the problems have been. That's just, it's a broad overview. Yes, there are one-offs with people who signed a lease 8 months earlier. But the students need to have information available to them. Yes, there's information out, but do they know where to find it? And like the college, they have that student rental board. How you don't have, any student who logs in, before you should be able to search, here are your rights. That should be there right out of the gate. And at the end of the first semester, right after finals, everybody should get an email. If you're looking for off-campus housing next year, please print this out and read it. I think that would alleviate a lot of the problems. It's not going to alleviate the issues with the bad landlords. It may give them a little bit more leverage on what to do. I sent you guys all out the spreadsheet thing. This is the most simple spreadsheet. I do a check-in
When did you send it?
today, this
Oh,
afternoon.
okay. Mine's that's home.
This is a checklist that every tenant has to do when they move in. They have to move in together. That's a challenge, because certain people will move in June, and then the others won't be back till August. Well, you have to go through. I have them complete this form, everything that's wrong, from doors to walls to ceilings to appliances, you name it. They give it back to me. I try to have it done within 5 days. And my goal is to give a tenant this back blank. You've moved in, there are no issues. They sign it, I sign it, they have a copy of it, they take pictures, I take pictures. Then when we go to move out, I bring the checklist. We go over through each room. This is what's wrong, this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong. You agree, disagree. Here's the photos from when you moved in. It alleviates a lot of the issues,
I do that, yeah.
but I don't think enough tenants know to do that because they're so excited to be moving in. They're just
Well, I mean,
focused.
that was actually one of my aims at joining the council, was to kind of create, some kind of education or informational, not necessarily program, but, a way of, educating first-time renters, students, because, I mean, that makes up a large, section of the tenants here in town. So, I mean, I would definitely be interested in working, towards something like that.
But this protects both sides. And that's what we really,
Yep.
that should be the purpose of this, whether I'm
Did you email that out?
I emailed it out to the group today, probably like around 11 o'clock this morning.
Because we do something similar, but maybe we don't do the students, so it's a little different. But we have attached to our lease, a number of different items that relate to both sides. Like we do the snowplow, we do all the maintenance, we do all the so on and so forth. And then the tenants are required, the parking issue, and then quiet hours and so forth. So we do give them, a checklist of showing what the landlord is responsible for, and what the tenant. And what I gather is it took something like we do, something like you do, maybe what Valerie, and put it in a formal handbook or check sheet. Maybe you can give it to the college or give
Well,
it to the
that's
building.
why this is out. I sent it in a PDF. I mean, you can adapt it any way you like. Tenants can adapt it any way they like. But this
They really
protects
should.
you.
They should have a copy of, the condition of everything right when they move in the pictures.
Right,
as
but
well.
a lot of people
No, I know,
don't
they
do it.
Well, that's why we need to,
Pictures.
educate.
Right, but that's what I think that's what we should be focused on right
Not
now.
just
You should
pictures,
have-
there's either something should be signed and dated, or the picture should have the newspaper
Yeah.
in the picture, some sort of a timestamp. so that
Well,
they confirm the dates.
Well, I mean,
When I send this, I send the photos in an email form. Everything's
Yeah.
there. It's in a
well,
zip
I
drive.
mean, this way you have both parties that have signed it, so they're both acknowledging that on this date, this
Yep.
is the state of the
And I
property.
believe that would help
That's
alleviate
actually-
a lot of the problems.
That's in the tenant rights and responsibilities document, we have a thing about dates and photographs and both parties signing it. Two things, one, do you think you can get us a copy of that booklet, or?
I'm working on that,
Okay,
yes.
excellent, because it would be great to have it, so we can
Yep, oh,
compare
yeah.
to whatever we have, and if it's duplicate information, then we'll just maybe try to help
So-
make an electronic copy and encourage the college to have it
So
available.
it's like a packet that's newly put together, or that?
I'm not
The
sure.
Student Association,
Yeah, because like
So I mean,
I
as a
said,
student, I should be able to just walk there and get a copy now.
I would
theoretically.
hope so.
Yeah, but if they can find it, they.
Yeah, because when I had the meeting with, the Dean of Student Affairs in Victoria Castleberg, then immediately they said, when this is done, send it to us, Victoria will put her stamp on it, and we will post it online, we will email it out to all of our off-campus students. So the fact that they didn't do this with this other booklet you're talking about, it's strange to me, why they wouldn't have put that out electronically.
Well, the other real issue with that is the
Well, we
school
never
sends out
finished it.
about, 20 emails a day, so even if they do send out something like this, the odds of any student actually, looking at it is pretty, it's pretty moot, so I think.
Well, you wouldn't send this to freshmen, right? Because you gotta live
Yeah.
on campus as a freshman.
No, I just think, like, the point you had about there should be, a place on a website where you can click and the brochure will pop up in a PDF or something, like, I think that's, a good idea.
Ithaca has it. You go to Ithaca's website, you just type in student housing, takes you to a page. That here's your rights, here's all these different things you can click on. And why the college doesn't have that, I don't understand. But when we're putting our book together and our guide, we gotta ask the college to put our link there. Education is the most important thing. If we educate the
Yep.
students, if we educate the renters, I think that's gonna go a long way towards changing the culture. And it's not gonna happen in a year, it's gonna take 4 years until that cycles all the way through. So in the first couple of years, the students who are renting are now on board with what we're doing. They're gonna tell their friends who are looking to move off campus, hey, there's a checklist, make sure you use this checklist. And I'm sure there's some landlords who are like, why would you share that with anybody? Because it's the right thing to do.
And that's something we can send out as a template, when we're providing educational materials along with our pamphlets or documents or this, that, the other thing, we could have a copy of that as a sample of, what landlords and tenants can
Is
both
this
use.
part of your lease?
No, the lease is the lease. Whenever somebody checks in, this is what they get.
I have,
When I go give them the keys, here you go. You got 72 hours. Check every window, check the stove, make sure everything works. I believe everything works, but if it doesn't, let me know. The fans, the light bulbs,
that's more formal than I'm doing it, and I like that a lot.
Well, you need clip art though, so
Pardon me?
you need clip art.
Well, actually,
It gets their attention.
a lot of the landlord-tenant rights book stuff is actually in my lease. And they actually signed that they read the part
They
about it.
don't read the lease.
Oh, they called me up and tell me it was humorous. I do read
They
it.
don't, listen, they read it.
But yes,
I
they
get
don't
last
read it
month's
enough.
rent, all right? I get last month's rent from everybody. I had 5 parents send me May's rent.
Yep, me too.
Do you want me to shred this check or send it back? Like, why, you're not gonna collect rent? I said, no, you already paid for it. They're like, oh, didn't know. I mean, they don't really follow up, and the students need to be aware, the parents need to be aware. And I really wish that, one of the things I believe the building inspector does it, but anybody who's going to rent should know to go to the village building officer and ask for the file on the property that they're looking to rent from. Because all those properties have to be inspected. And I think it came up before that there are landlords who don't register. Guess what happens? I'm looking to rent at XYZ property. Can I see the file? Well, we don't have a file on them.
Yeah, I know, I spoke with Bryant about this yesterday, and they are getting caught up on catching the houses. They've got more staff now, and they're more
They do.
able, so they're getting caught up. But yes,
But everybody should know that.
They should
In the
know
family,
law.
first step, go to the building inspector. What properties you looking at? Who's the landlord? The building department will tell you who's the good landlord, who's not the good landlord, where the issues are. I wouldn't rent the shit. You pull out a folder that's thick, that says, you know what, mold remediation. Yeah, it's probably a pretty good indication that you don't want to live there. Yeah, it's been remediated, but there's issues.
So Eddie, you're saying we should put this together in just in the form of a check sheet or something, give it to the building
I would
inspector?
love to have a sheet that
I would
says
be-
if you're looking to move off campus, or if you're looking to rent,
Yeah.
first thing out, here's a hyperlink, your rights. Here's a hyperlink, what you should do when you're looking at a lease, what you should do the day you move in, and have sheets so everyone is available, but have it on a hyperlink that anybody can get it on their phone.
And what website do they go to see this?
I would love for the college to have that.
Okay.
They should have a page dedicated to that, and we should
So
offer to help
at
them
our
with
group,
that.
as a member of our group, you will go and try to get them to enforce that.
Yes, I would love for them to incorporate
If
some
you
of
need some
the.
help with it, I don't think I'm on any of these committees. You got my email, you got my phone, I'd be
Yeah.
more than happy to help.
Good, yeah, no, but I mean, what do you think? I mean, do you think that's a good
Oh,
starting point, or?
Absolutely, and I think it's a really good idea. I talk to other landlords that are my age and older, and they're not really understanding the fact that it's an electronic world and everybody under 25 lives in it. And you're absolutely right. The idea, I don't even do my leases on paper anymore, because I know that they're like, wow, yeah, Adobe sign. They get it, and I think that asking somebody to print things up is a waste of paper and money and trees and space on a shelf. But having them put the links onto and I think that the links need to be in a place that somehow they have to go there once, and at least know where it is, having seen it. Part of orientation, when you're signing up for orientation as a transfer student, here's these links. I think that there should be a way to make that happen. But I also think it should be available on the village website as well.
And I think we should try and get the Oracle to do an article once a year, preferably right around December or January when
Yep.
people are looking.
When they start looking.
This is it's education. The more,
We
we
can
are,
also, from time to time, set up a table in the student union building and just like sit there for an afternoon and talk to students that walk by. That's something we discussed, and I think we actually did that once or twice.
The many times that I've tried to talk to the college itself about anything to do with improving the relationship between the college and the local landlords, it has been met with like militaristic.
well, I think, but that's not what we're trying to do.
Right.
We're not trying to improve the relationship between the college and the landlords. What we're trying to do is be a conduit for education for the students who are looking to rent.
Right.
And the more educated the students are, the better armed they will be with what they're having to deal with. And it's going to make the landlords have to up their game. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, right?
Well, let's see what's in their document.
Mhm.
Because in addition to anything that's been produced locally, whether it's by us or by the campus, alongside that should also be linked to the Attorney General's
Absolutely.
tenants' rights guide, because that's going to include stuff that's not in the local pamphlets. So that link should also be anywhere that our link is. So we need to get a copy of what they have, what they're giving out. If it's duplicate information with what we have, or if what we have is a little bit different, we can do ours as well, and there could be 3 links. There could be like the student one, the general tenant one, and the state one, and get those, get links on village, at the college, and I also think because I believe we have a budget, is that?
We have something.
We had something at one
Yeah.
point, and I think, I want to say Dennis said like $1,000.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, but that's what's ringing in my head. But if we use a very small portion and maybe just have paper copies from places like Woodland, no, not Woodland Farms, that's not a living development. Some of the larger complexes where a lot of elderly citizens live that are maybe less, fluent with the internet. So maybe having some paper copies just to have at Village Hall, and maybe to hand out to, at places where
Right.
there are a large concentration of senior citizens who either have limited mobility or limited access to the internet, just paper copies for those folks, but then get links everywhere, I think would be great. But we really need to get a copy of whatever the college has, because I need to know what's in that, so we can compare that to what we are developing and trying to
Right.
update. And if we have to do all of them, then great. If what they have is comprehensive enough, that's great too. But we definitely need to make an electronic copy of it and post it everywhere.
Get links. And create links to it through different
Yes.
media.
Yeah, yep, we can post that all over Facebook. And
Right.
I don't know, the Instagram and the Tumblr, I don't really know how to use those things. So
I like
use Facebook and email.
Facebook is enough for me.
Them youngins use, you know, whatever electronic outlets and social media outlets that we can use.
From the students, from a tenant perspective, what's the biggest issue?
I mean, personally for me, like I haven't really had any issues. I've been a tenant in various places for like over a decade now, so I'm very well informed of my rights and all of that. But just from what I've heard from people is, I mean, a lot of it is people aren't aware of, you know, the things that landlords are doing that aren't necessarily, you know, allowed, or that they themselves are, you know, in violation of something, and then when their landlord comes to, you know, inform them of that, that creates a whole nother dispute. So that's really one of the main reason I came here, like I was saying before, is, you know, to educate people, to let them know, you know, if this is happening, you have the right to do this. Or if you're not, you know, fulfilling your, you know, your obligation to, you know, keep the apartment in good repair, like, you know, you're liable for this and that kind of thing. It's pretty much like one idea I had. It's very similar to what you're saying, you know, with the school and having the school, you know, if you're an off-campus student or something like that, you know, on the web page when you register for classes or something, have it be like, you know, before you click to the next page, just read this over real quick, you know, something like that. I thought one of my ideas, actually before I joined, is to just kind of have that, not necessarily be, you know, enforced or anything, but I think when any lease is given to, you know, any tenant here in New Paltz, I think that they should kind of, you know, on the lease either be, you know, like check out this website for your rights as a tenant, or just, you know, just some kind of thing, you know, directing, you know, tenants to where they can further educate themselves. So, you know, like this is, you know, putting the school to the side for a second and just kind of like village-wide, I think that would be a good idea to say, you know, every time you're looking at a lease, also be able to say like, oh, okay, like here are my rights as well, like be able to look at everything side by side and, you know, be informed, you know, at that point in time. Just because a lot of people, you know, aren't students, but are still at that same age where their first apartment's here in New Paltz and they just don't have that information. But, you know, the fact that the school would be putting something out wouldn't affect them at all.
So it's education.
Yeah, exactly. That's like I was saying. That's why I'm here. Is I'm all about. I just want to educate, you know, the young people and, you know, and landlords as well, you know, as to what, you know, you can and cannot do and what your rights, you know, are in that.
I like that idea. I think once we get our ducks in a row and we have the brochures and the booklets and the pamphlets and everything, you know, with everybody's rights outlined in it, to have a little line on the bottom of your lease and say, you know, please check this out.
You know what's even better than that?
But you're not gonna be able to force a landlord.
But I wouldn't mind
about
doing that, because actually, you know what you do, you start off on the right foot. It's like, okay, I'm giving you someplace where you can go and look at something. I'm not keeping everything a secret so that I can.
Well,
you don't have
but
to
what
say,
I
oh,
would
never
love
knew
to
about
be able
this.
to do is, and I'm focused on the college right now, not village-wide, but college-wide. I would love it if the college, you know, you have to check a box. Are you gonna be staying on campus next year?
Yeah.
No. All right, well, if you're a student and you're not staying on campus, they have that email. Will the college send out a link about what your rights are?
They will.
But
They
that-
told me they would. They
that's-
have a separate listserv for off-campus students.
Right, and that's what I think we really have to focus on from an educational standpoint.
I have an idea. I don't know if we can evolve it or not. Every time I send out a lease, I have to send out the don't eat lead paint chips document for the government. It's a required document,
disclaimer.
and in the lease itself, they have to initial that they got it and received it and read it, and I have to check off that my parts of it, and we both sign that we've gotten that. That's in the lease, though the document is separate. I wouldn't have any problem at all with the discussion about whether or not the village as its own entity, like we've been asked to make recommendations about the Tenant Protection Act, but I would much rather see us make recommendations about making that document be a required accompaniment to a lease, and that it should be in the lease, that they signed it, that they got it when they got the lease.
I mean, that's like 100% like what drew me here is to get something like that kind of set in place. Because I mean, everything has a disclaimer, you know, you have to check so many boxes to do everything. It's like, why not, you know, rent an apartment? Like, you should, you know, especially be forced to know your rights, like, you know,
Right.
like, so I think I support that.
I just don't know if you can legally.
Yeah,
That-
I was gonna
that-
say.
That's
Yeah,
a tough
we can
legal
try.
thing.
Who do we ask? We can certainly promote that as like our official recommendation
Yes,
to landlords
yes.
to say like, this is what you should do to be preemptive, and prevent problems from happening. But we can check in, who would we ask for about the legality? I mean, I guess we could,
That would be the village attorney.
Yeah.
But doesn't it cost them like $1 million like a second every time we ask them a question?
I would just like to see us.
I mean, we can talk to Dennis,
Yeah,
who
let's-
disappeared. Oh, not that Dennis, but the other Dennis.
He's
He's on TV.
Oh, but
Why don't we just have
okay.
on a.
We can ask if that's something that can be done to inquire about the liability of that. And I had a second point, and.
well,
I would like to see, maybe the document would be too cumbersome, but I would like to see a rights and responsibility document coupled with landlord-tenant. In other words, one, landlord-tenant, same document, rights and responsibilities outlined for both in the one document. So that, what I said the first meeting we came here, there's such an adversarial relationship between landlords and tenants that it's like, okay, well, we're having our document, well, we're gonna try to have our document. I'd rather see it all in one, so that it's, you know, you can review it and it's right there and everybody sees what everybody's supposed to be doing. It's not, oh, I'm the landlord, I'm the tenant.
Well, that's
you know.
tough because certain landlords do different things than other landlords, and that's, you could have it be a broad overview,
Broad.
but, go ahead.
Sorry, that was actually gonna be my point that I forgot, is that I've never signed a lease in New Paltz in my entire life. And by entire life, I mean since 2000, because that's when I moved to New Paltz. But yeah, I've never signed a lease. I lived in month-to-month rentals where there was no lease. The first was a terrible experience, and the current is a great experience, but there is no lease. So that would solve part of the problem if that was something that we could legally enforce, as opposed to strongly encourage. That would only solve the problem for the landlords who actually have leases, because there's a lot of month-to-month rentals in this town that don't have leases.
But this idea is, that's the key, what you just brought up. And again, can't we just have maybe something simple like this on a letterhead, and like you say, guidelines for tenants, guidelines for landlords, we don't have to get that specific. And when you get the person who comes to rent the property, apartment, say, by the way, along with your lease, here's something from the Landlord-Tenant Council. There's a lot of good informative links here or whatever, plus it spells out what you can expect from us and what we expect from you.
Right.
And let's get along.
Exactly.
Well,
That's
kind of
my
Because
have
it
to have
comes
that.
down to, like with this girl here, it comes down to it that the landlord does have a distinct responsibility to protect the people who are living there. And the only way that's going to come about is if you have good discourse and you have, like I told you before, we don't even call us tenants, they're neighbors. Mine's a little different situation because it's 7 acres, we live there with everybody. But we've been through the student thing, you know, and we've been doing this for 18 years now. And we did the same with the students. There wasn't, once in a while you'd have something, but your point is key. Start out the relationship in an amiable manner,
Right.
so everybody says, yeah, okay, this is good,
I'm
shake
gonna do
hands and
this,
go.
you're gonna do that.
And as a council, that, to me, that's why I came here. I told Tim, I'll come here because there shouldn't be this argument between everybody. Oh, you gotta do this. It's a tiny, tiny.
Right, but we're here
Renting
because
one
we
room.
care. There's a bunch of people out there who don't care.
Yeah, well, then you corral them.
You can't corral them.
Well, you know what I mean.
It's educate. If you educate
Well,
the
If
tenants,
I'm on the
if you-
planning
if you-
board, and I see we gotta watch the people who come to the planning board, we look at their pre-applications, we look at their site plans, and we see, you know, are you really doing this because you want a vacation home, or is this gonna be a student rental? So, I'm well aware of what you're saying there, but I think as a group, we have to, in a nice way.
We can strongly
I say
suggest.
corral them, get them around to thinking in the proper way that when they rent to a student, like this young guy says, maybe it's the first time anybody rented that they're not taking advantage of, that this person they're renting from is gonna be a friend, he's gonna help them, and in turn, they're going to abide by his rules. And I think as our council, if we just put something out like that, say, okay, this should go with every lease, everybody be informed, and
Well, you can
if there
suggest it, I
if
just
there
don't
isn't
think
issue-
you can legally
You're not
make
gonna make
that
a
happen.
perfect world, every landlord's not gonna include it and hand it to their
Why
tenant.
would
But
you
that
think it
is
would be
actually-
added to
take
the
a
I
shot
want
at
it to
it.
be available.
Why would you
I
think that
love
it could
to
be added to village
available.
code along with the inspection?
Not to mention that people are friends in New Paltz. It's a small community. So if one person gets handed that by their responsible landlords, like
Right.
those who are perhaps present, they might say something to like their neighbor or their friend and be like, well, I got this from my landlord. Like, what did your landlord give you? You know what I mean? And so, you know,
And
over time,
And on the
pressure might
letterhead, where it
develop.
says landlord tenant, that we're together, we're not on opposite sides of the fence, we're doing something together to make it better.
Yeah, in fact, one of our big things, that's what we said, we look, and when it says no pets allowed, I put pets welcome. That's our little niche. I'll take any pet owner, over one who's not an owner. I'm gonna go think about putting all our tenants have
Dog
pets.
park?
I am, Ed. I got 4 Airedales.
Yeah, you got the space.
But the people who rent from us, they, just what you said, it's word of mouth. Go to Dennis and Paula, no hassle. I don't charge them any money for a pet, you know? Bring your dog, as long as, you know, you can't get overboard, but bring your dog, bring your cat, and again, it's the same. If it's students, bring your friends over,
Right,
let's meet them.
but again, you have the space to do that, and that's great. I think that's fantastic that you do that. But you can't corral everybody to say, hey, you have to do this, or you have to. That's my only point.
All I'm saying by corral is let the landlord do the right thing by the student, because maybe they're not informed, not only what they should be doing correctly, but knowing what, as you say, what the
If the landlords did right by the students, and the students did right by the landlords, we wouldn't be sitting at
What
this
a
table.
wonderful world it would be.
No.
But we wouldn't be sitting at this table.
But again, to
What-
get
what-
our
what-
council in, I think we have something. I mean, the links are all at, but if everybody's signing a lease, or at least go around to the people who are renting and say, okay, would you make sure you put this in the packet that you give the people who come to rent from you?
So we need to get the document prepared, and I firmly
You're
believe
right.
it should be rights and responsibilities, landlords, tenants, in the same document. Not
Okay, well, we
four
have
different
half of
documents.
that now, so if we can do the other half, then we're solid. So I feel like we're fairly in agreement about all this. We need to get all the information onto papers and get it electronically put everywhere into the world.
Right.
Cool. What's next?
I just want to know from Ken, what's your big issue?
My big issue is habitability issues, you know, the difference between wear and tear damage, between damage, because, you know, not everybody has the same interpretation as to what those are, and really just like finding ways that like we could suggest to the trustees to like strengthen already existing policies out there, because, you know,
Strengthen or enforce?
both, really. Enforcing is kind of, in my mind, strengthening, you know, it's kind of all part. But, you know, housing issues are an issue as old as time. Like, this isn't anything new, you know, what each decade has their own issues. And we just, you know, it's an ever-evolving thing that needs to be worked on from my perspective, at least. So, yeah, that's why I really want to put together information to really pass on to the trustees, and actually that brings me to a really great segue, which is E on the agenda that I thought it could go under, is I put together just some information, just in response to the impact study you did last time, Val, you know, just putting it in there, and I actually printed out some for everyone, so. Just going through statistics, you know, New Paltz and Burlington aren't the most comparable, one's a city, one's a village, but we can really, you know, look at some facts to really put together or add to the narrative that Val produced last time. And the most interesting one that I actually found so the right-hand column or the left-hand column is the census data, so 2000 and 2010, just to produce a trend. The right-hand side is the American Community Survey, which is also done by the census, but it's done on a yearly basis. I pulled 2015's number because that was the most complete data set that they had in, you know, relevant time. I think 2016 is still being, you know, finalized and put together. But a really interesting thing is looking at, you know, the median rents So Burlington actually has a cheaper rent for a single person looking for a studio apartment, is which how the American Community Survey put that out there. That's how they measured it, as a single person looking for a single person's like home. And it's a median rent, so I like median statistics a little bit more because we all know there's outliers on either end, and at least median, it's a more realistic picture of what the center is.
Hey Ken,
Yeah.
I've thought about this too. This median income,
Yeah,
does that include students?
it will include everybody who has a permanent residence, so it does not include the on-campus students because
No,
usually.
not on campus.
Yeah, it includes
So
all.
that will bring that median income way down.
Well, so that's why we pick median, because average would be like, let's say there's 10 people around the table, 5 of them are
Yeah, I know
students.
what median is.
Okay, so it really gets rid of the outliers, like the people who make no income, because
Yeah,
you're
but median
chopping.
is gonna be if we had 50,000, and
Mhm.
over here you got 350,000, and here you have 10. Okay, the median's
You're
gonna be
chopping
here.
into the
I'm
middle.
just saying the median does, in this case, fall into the average. So to me, 41,000 median income for New Paltz is low. And again, before I saw this, I was thinking of this the other day regarding something else. So there's nothing wrong with it, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
that median income
So-
is lower. If you extracted the students, I bet that median income would be a lot higher.
I would actually disagree, just because, poor girl. Almost everybody that I know, and I'm 35. I'm not in my 20s. I've been out there in the work world for a while now, and almost everybody I know who's in my age range is making $15,000 to $20,000 an hour,
Awesome.
and that is a large percentage of the
What was the
tenants
number?
in this
What-
town. What's what?
What did you say? 15 to?
I make 15. Yeah, me and my friends all range 15, sometimes less, $15,000 to $20,000 a year.
Oh, you said an hour.
Sorry. Oh my God, my wildest dreams in my mind. Did I tell you that I'm a super rich corporate lawyer? Did I forget to mention that? No.
Is this the village or the
I'm
town?
clearly a
So
farmer.
this is
is what I'm
the
doing.
12561 zip code.
Sorry.
So I couldn't separate it by village and town because the census didn't structure it based on municipality.
Right.
They structured it based on zip code. So for Burlington, it is the
And
same.
yeah, the other problem with this is that it didn't include all the poor people that don't have permanent residences in Burlington.
So, with all things like the census and data, no data set is perfection. I was just pulling together a set of data just to be able to, cite some sources and really establish a trend. And that's why I kept it, similar between, what statistics I use for New Paltz and what for Burlington. I always use median instead of average to keep it consistent and to keep it, going towards there. So no data set is perfect,
No.
but the U.S. Census is, one of the best tools we have for collecting money. We invest a lot of tax dollars into, doing this, and it's what Congress bases, their decision-making processes on building up, districts. So while there's no perfect data set, it is one of the best that we can look to really put towards it.
I understand the comparison and why it works here, but I also understand that when I walk down the street here, I see very few people who don't have a home, and there's nobody living in a tent.
What do you mean
Actually,
how
I
it
would
works?
say
What works?
is
By
a-
comparison to Burlington?
Well, I don't know if he's making an argument one way or the other. You're just presenting
I'm
statistical
just
data.
putting, I just felt like there wasn't enough, citable, statistics throwing out there, and I wanted to put together some. But just to say, Val, I think that is a very subjective thought, because there are a lot of, street kids,
It is
homeless
absolutely
people
subjective because
in
it's only
New
through
Paltz.
observation.
I do believe New Paltz as a community is a lot more friendly for people without homes, both in its community members donating materials, Amanda throwing food, not bombs, where she, literally organizes food on the side of the street for people to come and eat, and, even if they can't stay, you tell them take a to-go container. I think if anything, the difference might be the community, because in city populations you tend not to have as close of connections with your neighbors, or really largely a lot of other people. So homeless peoples can be very much just cast out on the street and
Actually,
sleeping in the
Burlington is very progressive in making sure that the city is doing the very best they can. They've set up tent communities and are trying to create new housing and laws that will prevent this from happening, but it's there,
Wow.
and they're not incognizant of it nor unfriendly about it. that really, the people I spoke to were very caring about
So,
it.
every community, there are people who are working to fix that. And I don't know if that's exactly where I'm coming from on that. It's just looking at so I picked percentage of persons living in poverty. Because, obviously Burlington has a huge population compared to New Paltz, but the percentage of that population living in poverty, it's kind of just interesting to really notice that, comparatively we have, what is it, an 8% gap between them. So just really putting it out there. And I also, it was really great actually, you brought a resource in, so Stephen Marshall, the guy in the community economic, I actually ended up calling him. It's just really
Nice, isn't he?
Yeah, he's actually a really nice guy, and I found an article on him where he's actually spent like half of his life as a homeless person. And I still have it up on my computer if anybody wants it, I can email it. And just like the perspective in which he gave me was a little different, so I guess I just wanted to mitigate, and I put his cell phone number on there because he did say if anybody wants to reach out to him to feel free.
Yeah, he did.
But he thinks just the one thing that might have been mistranslated is a lot of what he was talking about wasn't the security deposit law. He was actually talking about an affordable housing law that Bernie Sanders did in the 1980s. It's the land trust, which is, a super, in some people's minds, controversial thing that he did. But it basically was a very different way of looking at public housing. And he created, I forget the actual name of it, but it's, what is it? The Champlain Housing Trust, that's what they called it. So that was more of what he was speaking about, not really limiting security deposits, but this land trust in which houses are being bought by like public entities, supporting people of very low incomes and gaining access to housing. And really, the biggest thing that he was saying is that he can't really point to one policy that created the current context that they have in Burlington. It's just, we all have to remember 2008 happened, it affected every community, some communities a lot more than others, making it so that there's a lot more renters. In every community around the country, there are more renters now than there were before 2008. And there are more people, getting foreclosed on their homes. There are more people just trying to, sell them to investments when in the market it makes sense, like in a college town or Burlington, which has many schools in itself.
Yeah,
And cities just tend to have a higher percentage of renters.
Okay.
No, but I mean, my observation from 2000 to 2010, owner-occupied in New Paltz went from 60.8 to 63.5.
Yeah.
And that's one of the challenges you have with a good school district. Families are moving in.
Mm-hmm.
So you have rentals go down from 39.2% in 2000 to 36.5 in 2010. Burlington, which had owner-occupied of only 41%, actually dropped to 40.7%. So you have in Burlington 59.3% are renters, where in New Paltz renters are 36.5%. You have less rental houses.
Well, to be fair, cities are notoriously, historically, having more renters. Cities always have more renters than villages or
Who were the
rural
people
towns.
called
says
to
that they have-
included in the per capita income, and who were the people called to be included in the median income?
So what? So the people that they pull, so they pull their call list and their door knockings off of voter registrations, different kinds of public documents that you would submit. So usually it limits it to people who are over the age of 18. They're not hunting down 16-year-olds, being like, where do you live? How much do you make? Like, do you identify as Caucasian or not? But they, so it's usually adults. They do a mix between door-to-door knocking in very heavily populated areas, and then cold calling for the rest of it. So it's usually people who own cell phones, have jobs, file taxes, register to vote, go to jury duty. There's, I can't remember all the different ways that you can get onto their lists, but, and it's sponsored by the US government, so, they have access to tons of resources on people's contact information.
My point was being, New Paltz is a desirable place for families to move to.
Mm-hmm.
And based on this data, more houses are being owner-occupied than rented.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're sitting there looking at rentals, you're gonna have a higher rent per income because there's less out there.
Just a point of comparison.
Do
we have any statistics on any additional, for example, any new developments, since 2000,
So.
where there was like condo, like, you know, where the, what is it, Town and Country behind Mobile, where like each unit is actually owned by an independent person who either lives there or
That's
they
fine.
rent it out. Yeah. So like, has there been any new developments on either way, either as rentals or as homeowners, like that might also skew the data as far as, so maybe not necessarily transferring an individual house from being owner occupied to rental or vice versa, but actual additional housing in general.
So-
Also looking at the houses that were destroyed in Hurricane Irene, et cetera, et cetera. So there might be some extraneous variables here that we might want to just think about.
Well, they would be similar in both communities then.
Except for maybe the Hurricane Irene one, but just to point out, the total housing units actually does show a trend. So, you know, between 2000 and 2010, the new 12561 added around, what is it, like 198 homes. Burlington, and actually this is what Stephen Marshall was really talking about, is that, you know, the development of the city is being, so I can't speak from personal knowledge because I'm not from Burlington.
No problem with that.
But that they have a lot of reservations about creating new property and developing the city. And it's actually, you know, a great thing to point out is Burlington, the total housing actually dropped within the community between the two times in which the census was taken. Which, you know, to me kind of, you know, I don't know what every town's this data looks like, kind of signals to me kind of like, oh, what's going on, like a city, you know, total housing units dropped. But also just an interesting, you know, thing to point out is the amount of housing vacancies for a percentage of the amount of housing units. New Paltz actually has a ton more housing vacancies, and that is both with rental properties not being rented, taking into account, and homes that are like for sale and are not occupied. So that data includes both of those in there, and I just thought that that was an interesting.
Well, don't forget too, there's lots and lots of backstory reasons why there would be fewer not owner-occupied, but owned homes as opposed to rental properties. I mean, owning a home used to be a cash cow that you never could go wrong on, and real estate appreciation, it was just, that's what you did.
Yeah.
Now people are saying, not so much, and also people moving, like in New Paltz, I've been here for 6 generations, that's very unusual. People wanting to move, they're more mobile, and so they have to, they don't want to own a home to try to get out from under it when they go, so they're going to come into a place and they're going to rent. So there's lots and lots of other reasons, you know, why there would be home ownership or rental.
And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to pull this, is just to really show through the statistics. There are so many different variables, and I don't know if we can say that like for the community impact study, the thing that concerns me with that is, you know, who would be the person to do a community impact study? Because with some issues, it's very clear, cut and dry. Like with environmental issues, you know, we know exposure to mercury in waterways is bad. It's detrimental to people's health. So, you know, it's a more statistical number you can give to the risk of, you know, building a plant that employs mercury in its construction near a community of 6,000 people. So that kind of impact study is a lot more based on like medical science, you know, environmental science, biology. But with this, it's talking about the economy, it's talking about housing, which is a subject that arguably people have never really understood to the full extent. You know, we think we have it, you know, as you said, Donna, people used to think owning a home was a cash cow, but now we found out that that's not always the case. You know, some people, it cost them their entire livelihoods, the house that they chose to get into.
Well, the kind of houses people are building now as well are just
Huge and unnecessary.
consumer consumption.
Yeah.
Crazy, but.
But I mean, even like, I mean, I happen to know a woman who has 5 grown children, and you know, she's got a very good job, and on paper she makes a good living. But she is paying out of her unmentionables, like, or I don't know, whatever. I'm not gonna elaborate on that. To pay her mortgage. I mean, there's days where she's like, oh, do I go grocery shopping or do I just pay my mortgage? And you know, this is the house that she raised her 5 kids in, and she needed a house that could raise 5 kids. And you know, again, it's not like she's like working at McDonald's or, you know, this person has a good job.
It's not just the mortgages either,
you
because
know,
the escrow, the taxes to that.
No, of course,
That's
yeah. And this
phenomenal.
person doesn't actually live in New Paltz, but I mean, it's just, but it is a story like, you know, just because, you know, you have a decent job, you know, and again, she didn't buy her house in like right before 2008 or after 2008. Like, she's had that home for decades and decades and decades, you know, so like.
Well, like you said before, where people live here all their lives, they can't afford to live here anymore.
Right.
Until they get the property taxes under control, a landlords have to pay their property taxes and they're getting the money from the rentals. And so if everything's getting to be too expensive, look to Albany.
Ken, this is very interesting, I appreciate it.
Oh, also
And I
the sources
think you did a
are-
great, oh, okay.
Sorry.
I mean, one thing about this, you know, we like debated the data and everything, but we didn't really touch on the one thing that actually struck me as most interesting about your presentation is, you know, the deposits, the capital deposits, you know, it seems like Stephen was saying that you know, that we can't attribute Burlington's situation solely to that, and we can't even, you know, say whether that really played a role because the situation is so complex. I just wanted to kind of, you know, just bring that up, point that out, that's you know, something, because, you know, we've heard, that, you know, that Bernie Sanders passed this, you know, this cap on deposits that had these devastating consequences. But, you know, through your research, you've shown that that's not necessarily the case.
Oh, also just to, actually I just remember this, I'm terrible, I have a scatterbrained memory, but the one part of so the economic center, I forget the actual full title, what is it, was actually created by Bernie Sanders, I found out. And Stephen was telling me it was to give the mayor of the city of Burlington more power in development and housing issues, which I guess because of how it was set up, they did not. And it was actually made a few years before the Security Deposit Act even, you know, was passed.
So
I think
that
it was-
committee's older than he explained it to me?
The council was in 1983.
Economic and
the
social
bill is
something,
1986.
yeah.
And it's still in effect today?
It's still in effect today. The Champlain Housing Trust. It's actually it's super controversial.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the council.
Oh, the committee that he works
Yeah.
for? Yeah, it was created in 1983, and the Security Deposit Bill was codified in 1986.
Okay, I don't know if there was a different iteration of it after that, like the way we're on our third iteration of this, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah, it's actually
Yeah.
it's a publicly funded like group, so very similar to our like social service councils. You know, they have committees working on zoning, building, housing issues. Him, for example, he's the senior community service employment, so he actually helps older people fight against, you know, age discrimination in employment, in housing, and in various things like that. Which was really interesting.
Do you know what the population is of Burlington?
Yeah, well, it's not on here, but I actually kept all.
is this only one zip code in Burlington?
So I took the city center zip code and compared it, because yes, I believe there's two zip codes in, but one of them is like the city center, and then the other one is like kind of an outlier.
Right.
If we were to compare like a village of New Paltz to a town of New Paltz kind of situation.
This is awesome, thank you.
Yeah, and I included
I'm just
the
like,
links,
keep
so
looking at these
please
numbers,
feel
it's
free
like
to
there's-
go to these links, you know, test
No, I
out,
will.
you know, the other zip code as well.
Did you happen to look at any other towns in New York, say like Asuni, Geneseo, Asuni, Oneonta?
I did not get that far. I take the bus to Poughkeepsie every day.
Oh,
so-
no, listen, I'll do that,
But it
the
would be
reason I'm
interesting.
asking you is because Burlington is a much bigger city than New
Yeah.
Paltz is.
But we
That's-
should also look at places like Ithaca, we should also look at, you know, not necessarily just
Well,
college
Ithaca's a
towns, but like-
private school. I'm talking looking at other municipalities where there's a SUNY school, because that really tends to be,
Yeah, yes and no. Like, if you've ever been to SUNY Binghamton,
yes.
completely different
Yeah.
situation. Or
But
SUNY Purchase, also completely
Geneseo
different situation.
is
Geneseo.
very
Oneonta's
similar
horrible.
setup to New Paltz, with their campus being right on Main Street,
Okay.
with a village, and that's why I would just be curious to see what the
No, totally.
statistical
I mean, I
data
would love
looks
to
like
see
on
like,
that.
I don't know, like a cross section of like 10 different municipalities, which
Yeah.
is just this data, which is like super, like, when you like, I mean, just looking at this saying, okay, well, the total housing units went up by 200 units, but the occupied housing went down by 3%.
But
Like,
I'd like to
that's
know
really
what the
interesting right there.
population did, because the population from
So-
2000 to 2010.
But
That's
Yeah,
why
yeah,
I
totally,
included
definitely.
them as percentages, because it's a percentage of the population, so you can a little bit more like ceteris paribus keep out like what the actual population numbers are for the two communities, because it's just a percentage of their individual, you know, like let's say
Not
New Paltz
necessarily.
has
Well, I will
7,000
Not necessarily, you need the
As of-
population number.
As of, and this might help, obviously we want to get this in an official document, not just what Amanda said that time. But as of like, I don't know, like 10 years ago, New Paltz, the population of New Paltz, both town and village, sort of as a whole, like, was growing at a rate of about 1.1% every year. And so I don't think that trend has diminished. I think if anything, it's projected to continue at that rate, if not higher. So that's one, we should figure out where that number came from. And not just that thing Amanda said that she remembered from 10 years
Which
ago.
number are you talking about?
But, what's that?
Which number are you talking
Oh,
about?
just that the rate of the population of New Paltz as of like 10 years ago was increasing by 1.1% every year.
Right.
Which means that at no point was the population diminishing or even staying the same. It was actually increasing by 1.1% every year. So that is just something to keep in mind.
Right, but does that
we should get the source of that and find out also the definite numbers and compare that in previous years as well. But that is just a thing we could think about that might lend a little bit of context to this.
This isn't, I'm not trying, it's almost 9 o'clock. I think that this is a separate topic that maybe moving into next month, we can
Well, this is
follow up
part
on
of A.
education
This
stuff.
was part of A.
Right. The A is the,
A and
Aggregates statistics
Aggregate
about
statistics.
housing issues. I just wanted, like, the community impact study would be like great if every time somebody came in with
Right.
a new set of
reach out to Guy
the
Kemp.
piece of the puzzle, you know?
Wouldn't Guy have had that?
Somebody was supposed to talk to Guy Kemp.
I'll reach out to Guy.
Hey, you know, I have to go, I got 4 dogs.
Okay.
I appreciate it. But you know what, of course, I'll send to you, being on the planning board, you have to take at least 4 hours per year of training. And I just got on, so I went on, there's 2 places called NYCOM, NYCOM.com. And then the other I'll get for you is through the New York State, the Department of New York State Department. And there's courses in there that you take online, and they're really good. And some of them are free. I just took one now, it touches on two things we're talking about. I just did 3 courses this past week, so I had to catch up. One was on parking, which really is an interesting subject. The title of the course was The High Cost of Parking. How much space we use in communities for parking. And it's a very expensive thing, and it's does nothing really. But then the second one was short-term rentals. These are the B&B rentals that people come up to, and you're going to have a lot of them here, right across the street from. So I'm going to get that information for you because you'd like historical buildings was another one, open meeting laws. So I'll get that information, and all of you can go online, like the ones I just did for the NICOM. They're an hour. They do it so that you can do it at lunchtime, and they're well done, and I think you'll all enjoy
I've taken
Oh,
some of them while I was on the ZBA. They are good classes.
Yeah, I did the one on the zone, the ZBA on the planning board overview, because a lot of this stuff has to do with planning,
Right.
you know. But I have to let the Airedales out, but thanks for having me.
Just to touch on something that you had started to say earlier, about just kind of like just us doing these community impact studies. And I feel like, you know, because, well, one, we can't just spend all of our time and everything we do here doing, because like impact studies, this is the people that like consultants making a living off of doing it. You hire an entire consulting department to do these types of things, like what we do with the consolidation study. I'm sorry, the government efficiency and effectiveness study, which we paid somebody $50,000 to do. So I love this, and you know, obviously there are some things that we need that are missing, like, you know, the rate of the growth of population, the actual population, things like this. But like, instead of reinventing the wheel, there are entities like RUPCO and like the census and like Family of New Paltz and all these other places that are already collecting this data. So I don't think it's necessarily us like going out with surveys or like canvassing the neighborhoods, as much as just like consolidating the data that already exists that other people have done, so
Right.
duplicating work, and then just putting it together and being like, okay, and we can kind of like understand what this means and let that influence our decisions. Which I think is kind of what you're saying, but then I think, I don't know.
Actually, the point I was trying to make wasn't to discard this, because I think it actually, that we need to talk about it more in depth, but we're hitting 9 o'clock. I have a 3-hour drive ahead of me. I would
like
like
to
to
take a
put this on,
shower.
I would like to put this on the agenda for the next meeting, and then follow through with the assignments that we had already from, from the other parts of the group. But yes, I think this is important. Because my presentation was obviously based on a verbal conversation. It wasn't based on hard facts and data. And there was probably there was opinion in it, of course. So and at the end of the night, we're all like getting ready to go home. I'd rather give this the time it deserves rather than rush through it at the end of the night. Do you mind if we table it for the next meeting?
That's fine.
Okay,
That'll
cool.
give everybody more time to, look up any additional things.
Right,
or anything
exactly.
Like that. 'Cause, I'm sure within the next month, we can get the population of New Paltz.
Right.
It's just, it's just statistics, which
I mean,
is
yeah,
good,
this is the
good
jumping
to
off
have.
point, basically.
Hey, what's New Paltz's statistical significance? What's a Burlington? You can look
Maybe
at
we can look at a couple other cities.
5 or 6 other cities.
I would like to, my focus at the time was because of the proposals of the Landlord-Tenant Protection Act, but I think the idea to look at other cities that have similar demographics, to the college especially, is a really good idea. But,
Well, one
okay, so
other thing,
gonna
just
table
quickly,
this, pardon me?
Can I just add one thing to that
Sure.
quickly? So, you mentioned the Tenant Protection Act. I know when Celeste presented that, there were 3 or 4 municipalities aside from Burlington that she had mentioned that had passed
Right.
similar things. If we could, either find in the records those towns and get the...
One of them was Ithaca,
Yeah.
and the other one was a
I know
town
that-
in Texas.
Yeah, I know, and I think there was another one, either like Alabama or Tennessee or Mississippi
Thought it was
that
Texas.
she had mentioned. I could be mistaken, but if we could also get the demographics of those out,
That'd be interesting.
so-
Did you guys-
I did some research on her data that she presented, and I could not find any data that backed up what she said.
Did you guys get the email I sent that
Yes.
okay.
For your
'Cause
attorney
Yeah,
friend?
for my attorney friend, because she did cite, because she looked into precedents, and she did state some specific places that she had looked into that there was precedents, and then where there were no precedents, she also made notes of that there too, which might be helpful as far as like looking into, so definitely look at that. I do think this is an amazing jumping off point. Like there's a lot of information in these like 5 numbers.
Well, this is what we should be going off of, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This is awesome, and we can use this to just build upon.
Hearing what you said, just because a municipality may have at one time had a law, is it still a law?
Oh,
And if it's
really,
not a
I'm just saying,
law,
since
why
we're-
was it not a
Since we're
law?
talking about
Yeah.
collecting, samples from different places here in New York, we might as well look at places, outside of New York where there's similar stuff as passed, whether or not it's still in effect. Because there will be census records from those years that it was in effect. So even if they stopped doing it, that would actually give us an even better comparison to how something like this.
Looking at what I think we're tasked with, the thing that we can have the biggest impact on immediately out of the gate is helping educate renters. And I'm hoping that's what we're focused on. And then we get that together, then really drill down on the Tenant Protection Act, some of which I think has a lot of merit, some of it I think would never hold up in any situation whatsoever. So, that's gonna be my focus, is on education, educating the tenants and educating the landlords, and hopefully giving people a vehicle in which they're not left hung out to dry where they have to go to small claims court on either side.
And the Tenant Protection Act can also be like a working group thing. So
Yeah.
the people on the council that are particularly interested in that can get together and then, put a proposal forth to the council to be discussed, while the people who are more focused on education can be, doing that.
I think that they need to go hand in hand, though, as being aware of what the other's doing.
Oh, right, well, that's what I mean, at every meeting, one, we can kind of email, updates and be like, hey, this is what we came up with, we're gonna talk about that, can we talk about this in the next meeting, we'll have it be presented at council meeting, so we'll, just like Dennis is our liaison between the village board and us, we will keep each other informed of what each working group is doing.
At the next meeting, I would love on the agenda, the security deposit needs to be returned within 2 weeks. If not, something has to go out in writing. I think we should send that to the village board next meeting. Vote on it and have that. What's that?
I also just wanted to follow up that I
And
put
credit
together
checks,
a
like
draft
that,
on credit checks, and yeah, everybody maybe should take one home. It's just like a skeletal, what it would include and kind of,
I've never run a credit check.
I've never run a credit check either.
yeah.
You'll need one?
Honestly, I think by and large, it's usually landlords of
Do you have it?
larger complexes, the ones who live
Like
in New
Village
Jersey.
Arms.
Yeah, exactly.
Typically not the people renting for a year.
Yeah, it's not the
It's
people
the
who are living in our
long-term.
communities generally.
But yeah, so it just goes into, you know, all the different parts of the bill, like why would I or anybody else want to do it, you know, the definitions of what would be in play. You know, it applies to rental agreements, classified postings, bans the use of credit information, but doesn't ban, you know, debt to income analysis, because of course, you know, you need to be able to afford an apartment to, you know, convince a landlord to rent that apartment to you. So, you know, if your income is only like $1,000 and the apartment's $900, of course the landlord could use that as a reason to be like, no, I don't think this is gonna work out. But you know, like soft pulls or hard pulls on credit, you know, no asking, you know, a tenant, like, can you pull up your credit card and show it to me, even though I'm not pulling it. Yeah.
That's kind of offensive, I'm sorry, I've never done something.
Yeah, I mean,
Has this been an issue for people?
you know,
Yeah, I've never asked, so that's why I'm.
You know, I've been asked actually, you know, for the effort to save money, you know, the landlord would be like, hey, will you pull your credit, your one free credit pull a year, and print it out and bring it in and like show it. So, you know, really just limiting things like that, because, you know, when you put something out there, people are always gonna try to find a way around it, or, you know, I'm not pulling their credit, they are, and they're just giving it to me. And then also co-signers, because co-signers are kind of inherently a credit-based thing, you know. To have a co-signer on something means you're not credit-worthy enough on your own, and therefore somebody else
So
needs
you
to
want
back
you
you
want
up.
to ban co-signers?
Yeah,
And the requirement of
a requirement of a co-signer. Somebody like, you know, offers it up and it's like, well, you know, I'm a student, my mom handles most of my affairs, it really should be her on the lease, because, you know, she's sending, you know, Ed the check every month.
So you don't want to, you
Then it should
are
be the mom
not in
on
favor
the lease.
of a credit check or a co-signer?
Yeah, because co-signers are, you know, directly related to credit scores. You know, that is the purpose of it, is you are not credit worthy
You wouldn't
enough.
go either or?
No.
No, like,
Can I
a
explain?
landlord can still require proof of income, whether it's like a paycheck
stub.
stub with like, you know, your social security redacted or whatever.
Show me a tax return.
But yeah, or you know, whatever proof of income that the tenant can provide, of whether it could be a letter from their employer, you know, that doesn't give any personal information that that person's not willing to give. Yeah, so they can still require proof of income, making sure the person has the income to pay the rent. But yeah, no co-signers, no credit checks.
Yeah.
I would
So
lose,
typically, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would lose a quarter to 30% of my tenants, because I allow probably 40% of my tenants now to move in without paying any rent until their student money comes.
But you know
Now-
the money's coming from those
But I
people.
don't
No,
know,
you don't.
but I
You
don't
don't.
know that those students who haven't had a regular job history, who are relying on those loans and financial aid, to understand that that money has to come to me immediately. And I regularly run into, not regularly anymore, but I've kind of come up with a system to prevent that from happening. But I would lose the ability to give awesome housing to a significant number of students, because they would have to go out and get full-time jobs to pay for rent, which
I
they
mean,
don't now,
a lot
but
of
their
students
parents have to
already
make.
have to, you
Pardon
know,
me?
a lot of students actually already have to
Right.
get, you know, jobs and full-time jobs.
Right.
And, you know, we can only just look
I
to
have
the
both.
statistics of, you know, students under, you know, increasingly huge amounts of student loans, college tuition raising 600% since the 90s. You know, like, all of these things are very
But
real.
also-
While TAP is getting cut out by, you know, New York State's like funding, and Pell is even more in jeopardy because the federal government has been, you know, shielding
I'll
and
bring up
slipping away things.
the other, I'm sorry, let me finish this. I'm not sure what group, it's psychologists or whomever, but the age of adulthood has risen significantly from when I was 18 years old. The 90% of my tenants come to me with a parent who is running the show. And that means that the parent themselves isn't really sure that that individual is ready for full-blown adulthood. So in that case, I
The
want the
parent would
co-signer.
be the one signing the lease.
They
then.
are, they're the co-signer to the, but
Well,
the person.
then you
not
would just
a
shift it
co-signer, that would- they would
to
just
be,
be
you
the
know,
co-signer.
Sarah's mom is the
Right.
leaseholder, you know,
But Sarah's
effectively.
mom isn't
She's
considered to
not
be the
living
one
there.
that's living there, taking
But
care of
she's
the
sending
property.
the rent checks most likely.
I don't have a problem with any of this except for the co-signers, because I rent almost exclusively to students who don't have income. I know they don't have
Well, right, but a
income.
co-signer means there's two people signing the lease.
Correct.
So if it's just the parents signing the lease, that's not a co-signer. That's, you know,
But the-
you're,
but the
you're
parents,
contracting
but the
with the
parents are
parent.
not living there, because
Correct.
I have to know the identity of who is renting from me.
Right, well, if
But
you're,
it's the
but if you're,
same way
if,
that,
yeah.
that landlords that have tenants with children have to act. You know, that child isn't on the lease because they're 5, but they're still held under the same lease provisions of not running through the walls and damaging the whole apartment, you know, not creating a health hazard to other residents, you know, if it's like an apartment complex, you know, not doing any illegal activities while on the premise. You know, and you don't make the
But
5-year-old child
but they're
sign.
not physically living there, that's my issue. If the parent was physically living there, I wouldn't ask the child to be a co-signer. But if the parent lives on Long Island, and their child is a student who's living in my house, of course, and they're 18 years old.
But if the parent is signing the lease, they're the ones who are fiscally responsible for damages that occurred.
And then you could sue them to recoup any monies,
Correct.
and more likely maybe have an easier time recouping those monies,
So
because
there's
if
still
you're.
I've
one
never had a
main
problem
person
with that.
responsible
No.
for.
I've never had an issue with anybody paying their bills or with security deposit. But when you have the student, I can tell you this, when the student rents and the parent's a co-signer, the apartment's left a little bit nicer.
The parents take good care to make sure
Right,
that
but
they're.
all we're
But
saying,
the
like,
parents
literally,
sign the
nothing
lease.
would change. It's just, it wouldn't be the student and parent both signing, it would just be the parent signing. So they're not a co-signer,
the-
they're just the signer.
The
No.
parent
They're-
knows they're on the hook if that kid
Yeah.
goes and
Well, I
damages the house for thousands
If
of
the
dollars.
student was 16, yes, but if the student's of age 18 or older, I don't have any legal right to share any information with the parent, because they're an adult.
Well, no, but
Unless
if,
they're
but
signed
at
up.
their age of consent, they're consenting that their parents are involved.
That's why they co-sign.
Yeah, they co-sign
That's why they
together.
co-sign.
But it's not a
Actually,
co-sign,
I-
it's one entity still signing the lease.
now, my lease actually specifically says, so-and-so, the tenant, and actually, I don't do this with families and super adults. You know, I mean super adults meaning above. So
Am I
just-
super adult?
Yes, you are.
Do I get paid?
No, but I'm using that. But people that are above the college age that are not students, this is something I typically do with people that I understand that may not have lived away from home before, may not have lived outside of the dorms, who are still relying on their parents for their sustenance, and the parents' income is what the loans are reliant on, so that relationship is there. The student is signing that he's gonna follow all of the rules, or she is gonna follow all the rules of the house and make sure the payments are made and do everything an adult should do. But the parent, it actually says in there that this parent is a co-signer in, I can't remember exactly the words, but a co-signer in, guarantee of rent only and has no access, because I can't have parents coming and sleeping in houses full of college students either. So that privilege for the parent is taken away, and then the cosign makes sure that the rent gets paid.
So just a question, so you both do co-signers, correct?
Absolutely. Don't do
Would you be open to if somebody was like, I have the provable income to afford this place, here are my pay stubs, my tax returns, I don't want a co-signer? Would you adjust that policy, or would you be like, this is how my leases are structured? You
I
should
have,
live
when my
somewhere
guts
else."
told me it's a good thing.
Co-signer in lieu of ability to show proof of income?
Yeah, like, so would you, like, so if like, let's say, you know, I'm applying to one of your apartments, Ed, I make $2,000 a month after taxes, your apartment's $600 a month, so clearly, you know, based on those numbers, can afford that apartment, but your lease has a co-signer on it. Would you strike that if the applicant was, I can support this on my own, there's no reason you need my parents' information, I'm 23 and have a full-time job?
It would depend.
Well, me personally,
Yeah.
I've always rented to college students, so that's
Well,
why,
students-
but that's why I've always had that.
Like
If-
Jeff, though.
If you sat there and you,
He's
listen,
29 and he's a
right,
student.
no, at 29 years old,
Yeah.
would I ask a 29-year-old to have a co-signer? Absolutely not.
No.
That's You're an adult.
Oh, you're talking.
But an
Yeah, but
18,
there's like age discrimination laws, like would that fall under that purview of
that's
like?
not, it's not age discrimination. Well, if this is
If
somebody
you're
who's showing me
requiring someone
that he
of a
has,
younger age to have a cosigner,
Even if they have
and
provable
people
income.
who are older, you're not requiring provable
So,
income.
on certain-
That is kind of age
on
discrimination.
certain, no. When you sit there and you do your application, it asks for your employment, right? Employment history?
Yeah.
And it sits there and says, yes, waitress for 2 months last summer. Income, student.
Okay, but that's different. That's not dependent on age. That's dependent on the
Correct.
ability to show
But if somebody
income
has,
and work.
if I had somebody who was 29 years old who works at P&G's and has a job, am I gonna ask for a cosigner? No, absolutely not.
Sure, that's not solely based on age. So that
No,
wouldn't be age.
No,
So
discrimination.
it
if
would be
they have
based
these-
off of
If
the
your policy was based on age alone, like, well, you're 20, and even though you have a full-time job and can pay for your rent yourself, I'm still gonna require you
Right,
to
but-
have a cosigner
but we're doing-
versus somebody who, you know what I mean?
Yes, but we're talking about putting in a policy in place that's gonna impact every single landlord and,
Sure.
and every single tenant.
Which is, I
We're
think-
talking one-offs all the way around.
Right, well,
And-
that's why I think the compromise here is cosigners can be required in lieu of ability to show proof of income. So let's say
Yeah.
that 20-year-old doesn't have a
All
full-time
right, so
job,
what's
isn't
the
paying their
income,
own
what's the
rent,
income number?
then you can require
Well,
a
so
cosigner.
What's
What
the
I've
But
read-
it's not about their
so-
age, it's about the fact that they are unable to show
Correct.
the proof of
From
income,
what
and
I've
then
read-
you can require a cosigner.
From what I've read, every landlord has a different debt-to-income percentage that they'll accept, but I've seen that, a lot of landlords don't want their tenants spending more than 35 to 40% of their income on rent. And that is what I've at least read on the internet to be an industry standard. And it makes sense to me, 50% of your rent, or your income going to rent, like, it does create more of a possibility that somebody would default out of a lease.
Yeah, but that's.
But that's up to the landlord to decide with
I
their
guess, but I'm
comfortable
so
barometer is.
opposed to that because as a responsible person who's always paid my rent, for like a really long time, my rent was 50% of my income. Like, and I lived that way for a long time. And so if I couldn't get a rental because I only made enough, because rent is only getting so cheap in New Paltz. And even if you're at the cheapest place in town, but your income, that's still 50% of your income. And if people didn't want to rent to me because that rent was 50% of my income, where the hell would I go? Can I not say hell?
You can, it's hot,
Okay.
it's hot.
Hot as hell. So I take issue with, landlords getting to decide how much of a percentage of your income
But-
Is
you
that,
can
are you
spend
talking
on
about
rent.
the,
I mean, income
Kind of already
alloc-
do though, when they vet their applicants, they say like, oh, this doesn't look good to me, I'm not gonna call them back, I'm not gonna make a serious effort to, it's the landlord's preference, there are some landlords that would be like, oh, okay, from speaking to you, I believe you're responsible. From knowing you, Amanda,
Yeah.
being a member of the town for years, I can reasonably believe that, you will not just run away from this rental agreement and, shirk me every time we're on the street. So the landlords are already deciding their comfort of
Sure,
debt
but that's
to
not
income.
like any kind of, like that, and that's not anything we can enforce or control. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Just like, if a person just, like, if a landlord doesn't want to rent to students, like, that's not protected under the law. So they can be like, well, I don't rent to college students. And like, they don't even have to make that a blanket statement, they can simply just not rent to college students and make no announcement. And that's not something we can control, and that kind of falls under that purview. I just don't want that in any kind of way, in any
Well, we don't
kind
have
of
to write like this
legislation.
is the average
Right.
debt to
Exactly.
income.
So
I was just throwing it
I'm
out there.
certainly comfortable with. I'm definitely comfortable with the terminology or the clause of like, if you cannot show proof of income, then asking, because the landlord makes the decision after they get the proof. What we're legislating here is what the landlord is allowed to ask for, not how they're going to make the decision after they have the information. Which is where you're getting into the percentage of income thing.
Both,
Well,
just
we're-
because with all the information you put on a rental application, you could pull someone's credit, whether legally or not. Like, all you need is their driver's license number, their social
Sure.
security number, and one of their previous addresses.
But if this legislation is written properly, we can let people know that a landlord cannot require your driver's license number. Like, that can be, a landlord can't, cannot ask for certain personally identifiable information. That would make it impossible for them to do a credit check without.
But in Village,
No,
you
have to.
need to know who your your tenant is. How else do you
Sure,
know
sure,
that
sure.
legally? So I
Right, and then,
gotta
you know,
drive
if you have a lease,
Yeah.
yeah, well, I
So
mean,
the driver's license one doesn't concern me as much. Like I've seen some other ones where I'm like, isn't that?
you can go on a credit check with just somebody's DMV number. I thought you needed a social security number.
Well, no,
for a
but
credit
usually
check.
you put your social security number on rental applications because then if the landlord did need to sue you, it's a lot easier to do that if they're like, I have their social security number and I can reasonably say that that is that Amanda ran
Right,
around
right,
back.
which is like
Well,
anytime you're incurring.
Go-
any
Going
kind
back
of-
to
yeah.
that, the fact that you want to be able to take away a landlord's right to have a cosigner,
I
the
don't-
landlord does not have to choose to have a cosigner, but I should have the right to do that if I have a tenant who doesn't have the income or whatnot.
So I think that's the compromise that Amanda's
Well, right,
making
that's
now.
like you
So
can
if
either
somebody
ask
can
for-
prove their income and say,
Yeah.
I can reasonably afford this apartment,
Yeah.
I make $2,000 and your rent is $600,
Well,
then they should be
but
able to
there's
buy
other
that. So-
situations. Somebody could apply to me who had the income verifiable, but who walked out on a previous lease, or walked out on a lease a couple of years earlier who didn't pay their rent. Now, when you put down a reference and I call for that reference, and this was somebody who, you know what, he walked out on rent. Okay, one of the ways I'm gonna
Then
protect
you're just
myself.
not gonna rent that to that person.
Yeah,
No, maybe not. Listen, if you wanna rent this, you're gonna do it, but you're gonna have to have a cosigner.
You know, cosigner is insurance. Robert Downey Jr. wants to make a movie, he has to get like $17 billion that he's gonna finish, insurance, that he's gonna finish that movie because of his history. He went, you know, he dropped on movies when he went to jail, so they didn't get to make the movies.
Bit of a substance
So
abuse problem.
for the cosigner is, I actually don't ask for half the information you're talking about. And my protection is my really good relationship with the parents and the students. And we all know what the expectations are, and it's super successful. People stay for years, so I'm pretty sure it's working well. I don't want to have to ask people all those questions. I don't ask them
Right.
now.
I mean, the issue that we're coming to here too is that this issue specifically is highlighting the difference between students and non-student tenants.
Yes.
And this council is not just about college students.
I have
Correct.
those.
Although I feel like a lot of landlords who are on this council do a lot, if not all, but do a lot of student rentals. And I think that's becoming a little bit, not like a problem, but it's definitely becoming something that.
It shouldn't be our only focus.
Yeah, it shouldn't be our only focus. We
Right,
are in a
right.
college town, and there's a high percentage of student tenants, and that is something we should definitely always be thinking about.
Yep.
However, the problem with that we're dealing with as far as like your guys' ability to protect yourself in student rentals is a bit of a conflict with protecting people who are not students as far as like credit checks and all of the grown-up things that like students don't have to worry about yet because they don't have a credit history. They don't have these other things that they don't have student loans. They don't have medical bills because their parents are probably still, they've got health insurance through SUNY or they've got it from their parents. But people like me, that's not the situation.
Are people asking for cosigners of adults?
Yeah.
I don't.
Oh yeah. I mean, it depends. If you can't
Well,
show proof of income,
I
or
would-
you know, there's that's, and again, a lot of the time it's a bit more prevalent with people who are landlords of many properties. Like I don't mean like 4 or 5 houses. I mean like 3 or 4 complexes.
Right.
You know, and then live in New Jersey because it's just they're just
There's no personal-
They're
But
paper
they use
pushers,
credit
they
checks.
don't may not even meet the people
Yeah,
they're renting
like the
to.
Village Arms, for
Exactly.
example.
So they use
does
credit
employ
checks, that's
credit
how-
checks.
Exactly, and so what we're trying to do, and I guess what we're trying to work out here is a way to protect you guys and your dealings with college students, but while not compromising the privacy and credit history, privacy issue, discrimination for people who are not students, people like me. And I feel like there's definitely a solution here. We may not get into it now because I feel like we're all really hot and our brains are melting. But we should think about this. We should talk to
Let's
people
get
that
back
are
on-
smart and
Well, I have done that. I have spoken
Okay.
to some of the landlords who own the multiple dwellings, and they don't ask for
And
cosigners.
maybe we should look at other places that have passed legislation regarding
They do credit
check
checks.
bans.
They do credit checks, that's
No,
what they do.
well, right, but I'm saying we should look at other municipalities and cities and whatever who've passed credit check bans, look at their legislation, learn from what they did, because they might have solved this problem already, and we can just copy what they did, like not-for-profit plagiarism. I'm all about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty
So,
sure. Yeah, you need a credit check to get a car loan, you need a credit check to buy a house, you need a credit check to
Right,
take
I
out.
mean,
but
a
that
mortgage
closes
is a
the-
little different than a
Well,
rental
a car's
agreement.
not.
Right.
And also
Incurring
co-sign.
incurring a debt is different from renting a room.
Why,
Yeah,
that's
it-
incurring
Why?
debt.
No, it's not
Because
incurring a
you
debt, 'cause you're
prepay
paying in
rent.
advance.
Yeah, you pay the first to live there,
Yeah.
the first through the 30th. It's
Right.
not like you extend them
But
the
you're-
credit of living there and then they pay
Right.
you on the
Although you
30th
do that in
backwards, you
certain
know?
But
Yeah,
even,
no,
but
exactly.
even my tenants that are family tenants, their leases for a year or two, whatever they decide to do, my faith is gonna be that they're going to, it is a credit, it is a loan. I'm loaning them that space and they're paying that loan off monthly.
It's a contract, it's not a loan.
Yeah,
It's a
because
contract, but either way, if I rent
If
a
the
car.
fifth comes and they haven't paid you, you can evict them and then they have to like leave.
I mean,
It's not like a
yeah.
credit card bill where you spend $700 and then at the end of the month, discovers like, and now I would like, my part of this money back,
Or they could
It's
take-
not like
Or
an
they
app.
could- or they
could
So
take
they
their
got
car
all the
back.
goods and services from swiping their card, they got everything, they drove the
So
car.
let me ask you this, when you,
So you-
when you rent and you have to open up an account with Central Hudson, what do they ask you for?
Everywhere I live.
Well, that's
So
because
these
you
first
pay,
years I lived in
that's
really old
because
houses.
they're extending credit, because they don't say, you need to give me $100 for the month of May. They wait till the end of the month of May and then say, this is
That's
how
what
much
it
you
is.
used, and now we would like this money.
You know, what background checks do they do?
They do credit checks because it's a credit agreement, because you use the electricity from May 1st to May 29th, and then they bill you on May 30th. So you've already received the goods and services that you're paying for. A rental, day 5 could come, and then Ed's like, you haven't paid me, here's a cure or quit notice, and in 3 days, if you don't cure this, then you need to find another place, the sheriffs are gonna come and remove all your stuff.
Well, that's.
So you're not prepaying.
It doesn't
You're
go that
prepaying.
fast. It doesn't happen that
It
fast.
could, if you were like, I hate
Not in
this
New York,
tenant.
it doesn't.
Okay, so but you are still paying in advance for your month of rent. You aren't, collecting money on May 30th for the month of May.
I
You living there.
understand exactly what you're saying.
So it's not that's what is a credit relationship defined as, is like an open tab. Like the bar let you spend $70 and that was
Why are you
extending
looking at me
credit.
when you say that?
So you'd be
I-
fine, so you'd be fine with the credit check and a cosigner if landlords, instead of asking for rent on the 1st of the month, ask for it on the 30th of the month. That's what I'm hearing.
I mean, I think this goes into reinventing the wheel a tiny bit, but
Well,
like
but yes or no?
like if you are extending them credit and you say like, at the so all right, so if you would like to structure your lease to be like, 6 months go by and then you can pay me
No,
for this.
you pay me
note.
on the 30th of the month as opposed to the 1st of the month. You'd be fine with credit check and a cosigner.
I actually have a tenant that does that.
Hang on, it's, yes or
So-
no?
so-
No, I just,
That's
I
a personal thing, I mean, that's.
just want
That's
to know
not
because
how
that's.
the,
not-
that's not
that's
how
not
the
normal.
UCC.
I understand, I'm
That's
just
not
trying
how
to
the uni-
understand if that was how my lease was structured. I'm allowing you to stay there, and on the
So-
30th of the month, you have to pay me. You'd be fine with me doing a credit check.
But that's
and-
not the standard that's laid
That's
out
not-
in
that's
the
not what I asked,
UCC.
that's-
It's the Uniform Commercial Code, and it governs contracts that are written, and it covers everything from, kind of credit card contracts to mortgage
Yeah, but
contracts
I
to.
can structure my contract any way I want. I can structure my lease any way I want. So if I sat and
So,
said, I'm extending this to you.
If credit checks are that important to you that you would need to restructure it, then I guess then that
That's
is
not what
what
I asked you.
you would have to do.
But that wasn't what I
And you would
asked
have
you.
to pay a lawyer to make
But
sure
that's
that
like-
you're
but
following the
that's-
UCC.
I'm
But
just-
now
I
we're
just-
talking
wouldn't make a
about
lot
a
of sense.
hypothetical situation.
It's not hypothetical. I'll do it tomorrow.
May I ask a question?
You could, but it depends. If people have already signed your lease, then you can't do that.
Yeah,
If
you
the lease
can't
is already
change
signed.
it.
All's I'm
If
asking,
you-
listen, and I appreciate the work you did, and I love this dialogue, so I just want you to, but I'm just trying to understand. What you're saying is you're against it because it's not credit. I'm not extending somebody credit. If I did,
Well, there's
But-
more
but-
reasons why we're against it.
Well,
The
but
reasons
that's-
are because it's credit checks are an inherently racist and classist thing. Like the only way you can have all right, so what is Credit Karma telling me that I need to do to raise my credit is open another credit card so I can have a bigger credit limit. So it employs like a credit economy which isn't always, the best thing, judging by, 1929 when the US economy crashed, 2008 when the economy crashed. Like, we can see that large amounts of credit are not the most healthy thing for the economy. And then also, it is like a very derogatory practice in itself. Like, it very much is.
Derogatory in what sense?
It's derogatory by the kinds of things that you were born into, like the class in which you were born. They have proven that in loans, in different credit obligations, institutions have been racist. Ulster County Savings Bank literally just got indicted because they were using racially motivated criteria in when extending mortgage officers. Ulster Savings Bank. Somebody did a sting on them where they sent through 49 different locations, white and black applicants with similar credit scores, similar incomes. Even in a lot of the cases, the black applicant was better in terms of credit score and income, and Ulster Savings gave them different offers on points, different offers on mortgage rates, on closing costs, you name it.
Based on their credit score?
No. They literally, they had, candidate A, which was a white man, and candidate B, which was a female of color. The female of color had higher credit scores, higher incomes, less debt, and they still gave the white guy a better offer on a mortgage, whether that was in closing costs and fees.
Genderist.
Well,
Regardless.
it's a lot of it, actually.
It's all the above.
And then we see that, people's credit is ruined by some very innate things like divorce. Like, I work at a bank, and the amount of people who come in who are repairing their credit because of divorce, and that is a discrimination towards somebody, your credit score sucks because, your partner ran off and stopped paying their half of this bill, and then, the house got foreclosed on because you got into an agreement with two incomes, and so why is all of that a part of the decision making of somebody renting?
But it goes back to ability to pay too.
But we also need to discuss the fact that it's a little bit even bigger than that, because people are now doing credit checks when deciding whether or not to hire you. And so what we're facing, especially with these discriminatory, that's the word, tactics, is someone who has had the bad luck of having bad credit for whatever reason. My brother stole my identity. Ran up $12,000 in my name that he couldn't pay off. I had to deal with collection agencies on the phone for a year and a half who were accusing me of being a scumbag who didn't want to pay my bills. So that kind of stuff happens. Or, I haven't had insurance for a while. I've gone many, many years without having health insurance. And if I broke a leg, oh good God, the issues I would be facing on top of my student debt right now. So the issue is, okay, so now my credit sucks. I can't find a place to live because nobody wants to rent to me. And I can't find a job, so, well, now I'm just homeless on the street, twiddling my thumbs. A place to live is a human need and a human right. So is the ability to provide for yourself, i.e. a job, the ability to, provide food and the basic necessities and a place to live. So we're living in a situation where things like security checks, which are, by the way, run by 3 giant, evil, horrible companies who have ridiculously low levels of regulation and accountability to anyone.
Can I cut you off?
One second, I'm almost done.
Because we both.
I'm almost about to end scene. Almost ending scene. So we need to stop these things that are preventing people from getting the basic things that they need to exist as a human. End scene.
But
okay, sorry.
Ed and I both said we don't do credit checks.
Of course, but that's you two. That's you two. We also exclusively, not exclusively, but almost, but very. You rent to a lot of students.
Yes.
And these are issues that face mostly people who are non-students.
And my last comment is going to be, I understand why you're looking for certain things. And I'm looking at it from my point of view. And also trying to look at it from people who aren't sitting at this table. But you want to take away my right to have a cosigner.
That's the only argument I have with
I don't, that is, for me, I have an issue with not being able to have a cosigner.
I'm hearing that, and I understand where you're coming from. And again, it's this weird, nobody's fault conflict between you protecting yourself with student tenants and then non-student tenants being able to protect themselves. And I feel like there might be a solution out there. I feel like we need to do some research and we need to brainstorm. And I think we might be able to figure out a solution that would hopefully protect everyone.
May I ask a question? What is your aversion to the cosign? Have you ever been asked for a cosigner by a landlord?
No, because
you don't have leases.
No, because I had I never rented as a student. So I've only ever rented as a big old grown-up with a big fancy.
See, I get to a
with
point.
a big old job, so,
I get to a point where I don't want the government to micromanage my agreements with people. I want to know that I'm doing it and I'm doing it well, and my community is thriving because my houses are thriving, because my tenants, and all of that is dependent on
but they're
everything
not all
going
like
well.
you, unfortunately. You
But-
know, and even if
Right,
most
but you
are,
can't-
you know
you-
what I mean? Right, well,
We have an issue
right.
in this community, in every
Correct.
community, with landlords who,
Right, we don't wanna punish the good ones for the
but who
faults
do
of the bad.
specific things. So let's focus on,
Right. And
Process-
so what we're trying to
issue.
do is find a way, and that's kind of what our mission, if we choose to accept it, is find a way to protect people like me, non-student renters who have like, you know, credit, and how we can protect us and protect us from having to do credit checks or co-signers. Because like honestly, like I don't have anybody that could co-sign for me. Like in my life, either nobody in my family has good enough credit, or they're just like, no. Like, so if I was ever in a situation where that's something that I would need to have for whatever reason, if I like was unemployed for like a million years, or you know whatever might happen to me, you know, so I feel like there's a solution that somebody is really smarter than us, or smarter than me at least, has potentially worked out. I'd like to look at other communities and municipalities that have passed similar legislation, see what they did, and see if there's like a big fancy solution that allows you guys to do what you need to do, and not limiting your rights as landlords, that also doesn't put people like me
Expands the
in,
rights
you know,
of tenants that don't have a lot of
yeah, and
resources.
expands the rights of tenants and protects the rights of landlords, you know,
so I'm gonna, this will be my last thought, because I'm trying to understand your point of view. But if the two of you, this is what I want you to think about over the next 30 days. If the two of you, you got a great job, you're able to save all this money, and you purchased a rental property, you would be fine not doing credit checks, you would be fine with no cosigner.
If they had the income to prove
If
that
they don't,
could.
if they don't.
That is why I'm amicable to what
Well,
Amanda said, is that there's a rider that if, you know, your applicant cannot produce the documentation that they can reasonably afford the space in which they're renting,
But
then
she
to
doesn't
give-
want, but she doesn't want to have any parameters put in there.
I think Amanda was the one who
Yeah,
suggested the rider.
30%, 40% of income.
well, no,
That's
I
not
just
what
don't
we're
want that in the
talking about
legislation.
at this point.
Because, yeah, exactly, because what we're talking about is what you're allowed to ask of me. What you do with that information, I can't do anything about that. So,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah,
do
the other
whatever
thing-
you
the other
want.
thing is I
What-
don't-
what- what
If you
this
have really high
legislation would
standards
do-
Ed, about what you say debt to income should be, like if your personal standards are higher, then you can, you know, say I require a co-signer, but justified on the fact that I do not feel that you make enough money, and you know, every landlord has a different number in their head as to what that would be. Some people it's a lot lower, where they're like, you know, I'll take somebody as far up to like 67%, you know, like I'm like risky, and there's some people who are like, I'm not gonna touch anybody over 50%, like I'm just not going there. So we're not taking your guys' ability to vet your candidates for your applications and your rentals. And, you know, with Amanda's rider, if a student came up to you who makes a $2,000 a year off work study, then you can say, well, your income isn't sufficient enough to make me reasonably believe that you can fulfill this obligation, and then can have that.
Yeah, that's
But what
basically
Amanda
every one
doesn't
of my
want to say
renters.
is, you know, write in there that
I'm sorry, Ed, I didn't hear your
35%.
That's everyone except for a couple that I've had living with me with no lease for 20 years.
Yeah, I've never signed a lease, and,
But you know, but
yeah.
listen, you got, we've killed this.
Yeah, no, and again, like, you know, let's all think about this and do some research and see if anybody's solved our problems for us.
I'll return it to the agenda.
Yeah, then what's
Next week.
legal?
Cool.
I'm
Yeah, that too.
I'm gonna move that we close the meeting.
Yes, oh my
Second.
god.
Everybody in favor?
Oh, I,
Wonderful.
I'm not voting, I'm like,
You
yeah,
abstain.
let's do it.
Do we have to clean anything up?
Thank you. Are you tired or what?
I saw you running through the lot before.